What's happening, everybody? Welcome. Welcome. It's good to see you. Good to be here. And we're just going to jump right into things here. Let me get this off the screen. And Dr. Gary. Can you hear me? Well, for some reason, I can't hear you. I think I have you muted. Sorry about that. How are you, Dr. Gary?
Good. Can you hear me now?
Yep, sure can. It's good to see you. And I hope you had a great weekend.
Mm-hmm. I wasn't at CrimeCon, but
nor was I.
A lot of people we know were.
But
like
Vegas.
Time.
Are you going to go to Vegas? We got to go to Vegas.
I doubt it very severely. I mean, unless I were invited to do a panel.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go just to mill around. But
I don't believe that. I think that you're a mill around kind of guy, maybe.
Oh, I'm extremely introverted and would have no interest in milling around.
I'm kind of with you on that. Yeah. But that's all right, man. So how is everything? You look great. How's the editing going? I mean, I know you're working on the new book and everything, and so I know you're busy. I know you're busy.
Yeah. Well, it's a 15 author book. And I'm editing with Chris McDonough, and you know, it's all about the different areas of expertise in the Cold Case Foundation. So it's sort of a primer for both lay people and professionals on really how you would tackle trying to solve a crime, from the psychological to the technical, right? So everything from what does mental, severe mental illness and psychosis look like at a crime scene? What is the role of sexual fantasy? How, what does it mean when somebody stages a crime to make it look like something it isn't? What are signs of disorganization or extreme rage? What are clues that something is committed by a stranger as opposed to an intimate? And then moving into techniques, looking at blood spatter, DNA, the arson is a specialty, medical examiner work, forensic entomology, things like that. And then we have a section that looks at historical cases through the lens of our work. For example, I did the Lizzie Borden case with Ann Burgess, which I think alone will be of interest to some people. We looked at some others. And then we get into our work with Native Americans in the foundation. So there's really a lot there. And I love it because the chapters can be used as sort of standalone chapters for teaching or learning, or the book could be read cover to cover. So that's very cool. Somebody in the audience says they mailed me a letter.
Yeah, I was just looking at that.
No, I did not get any such letter. I do get very special mail. I will tell you that much. You'd be shocked what comes in the mail.
Like, do you ever get nervous when a package comes in?
Like it's ticking or something? Or looks like
no.
No, I mean, I definitely get very interesting mail. I mean, let me put it that way. I don't want to shame anyone by pointing out specific examples, but there really are some very odd things that have come in the mail. You'd be flabbergasted. One story I like to tell, although the last time I told it, somebody wrote that they didn't believe it, that it was a true story, but it is indeed. I wouldn't say it if it wasn't true. Which was that I was talking on a crime show a couple of years ago about how my style in dealing with crime is sort of Holmesian, but also a little bit Columbo-like, right? I draw a lot from that style, Peter Falk's style on that show. And so someone said to me playfully, "Do you have a trench coat?" And I said, "No, I don't." And someone mailed me one. And I found that interesting.
Did you ever wear it?
No. But it was interesting. I mean, this black box came and to the office, and people were like, "What the heck is this?" And I opened it, and it was a trench coat. It was very difficult to explain, why somebody would mail that. But it was interesting. But I get a lot of mail that you wouldn't believe. Sometimes scary.
Sure.
Angry mail. Yeah.
Do you still have the trench coat?
I don't know what became of it, but it's probably somewhere. It was sort of
the next day you ended up with brand new drapes or something.
Kind of tarp-like. What is this? The Sound of Music? I'm not going to make it into something. But it was it was tarp-like and kind of soiled a little bit, and But I do love Columbo. It was a sweet gesture.
Yeah. No, I think that it seems like I am surprised that you didn't at least wear it around the house, and water plants with it. That's what I would have done.
Thank you, Josh.
I'm just saying that's what adds.
The fact that this is what you fantasize about doing is deeply disturbing.
Well,
but we're going to pretend that you didn't just tell the world that you would traipse around the house wearing. Would it be only the outfit, the Columbo coat?
That's for me to know.
That's extremely disturbing. But okay, would you be wearing a wig?
Yeah, probably. Probably more like a Rick James one, like a Rick James wig.
This is a really, really disturbing fantasy.
It's not a fantasy. It's just coming to me right now. Like
this is why it's disturbing. Like this is the blank slate, and you're projecting into it that you would wear a Rick James wig and a trench coat and do.
And I'd water some plants
and do housework. Okay, if there are fishnets involved, I mean, I don't know, but okay. All right, now moving right along, Josh. Here, listen. Whatever floats your boat.
I don't have a boat, and if it did, it certainly wouldn't float. Okay, so what I'm going to do is
that was very interesting.
I know it's always something like, I don't know.
I have a way of getting people to let their unconscious out to play without realizing it. I told you that's my curse in life.
Yeah, I know.
Curse,
and you should warn me.
Yeah, it's just a thing. I'm on the bus. A stranger is sitting there. I say, "Isn't it a nice day?" They say yes, and the next thing you know, out comes the story of, how they're afraid to be on the bus because the bus might be rigged up with an explosive or something like that. People just have odd ideas, and they just tell them to me freely. It just pours out.
Well, not only did I tell you, I told a bunch of other people too, apparently.
That's great. Well, Dr. Frankenfurter, let's move on with the conversation.
So I am putting up there's going to be a link.
Don't dream it, be it.
There's going to be a link in the chat. It's going to be pinned to the top. It will be, wow, somebody already hit it.
This is why CrimeCon, the last time I went, was a lot. Because a lot of people who go to CrimeCon are interested in crime because they've been victimized by it.
Of course.
Right. So there's a lot of coming up to you and kind of saying, let me tell you about this. And, I'm a person that absorbs a lot of emotion from people, and it's a lot. You start to feel sort of plucked clean. Your battery runs out. And it's very intense, but I have a hard time with a lot of times feeling other people's pain.
Yeah.
And it can be a lot.
I bet it can. I mean, I completely understand that. It's somebody like, have you ever seen the movie Powder?
Oh yes, of course.
Remember
I have a signed photo of the actor here somewhere.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
In character.
Oh, really?
I have it here in my books. I can.
He wore a
Really
trench
want to
coat.
see it, I'll pull it out.
He wore a trench coat, and I do want to see it desperately. But remember the deer, like when the guy shoots the deer and he's like, "Oh, I can't feel any pain," and then that whole thing. Like I sort of kind of get that vibe from you sometimes. That like when somebody, that you know or care about or listening to, like you sort of take on, a bit of, what they're experiencing.
Personally, or an empathic person generally.
More empathic, but I mean, probably more than most, if that makes
Well,
sense.
that's why I'm pretty good at reading like a scene and kind of guessing what happened there.
Yeah.
It's an imagination, intuition, emotion thing. But sometimes I have been in the situation where I'll read somebody so well that it spooks them. Or I will pick something up about a person and say to other people, watch out for that person. And they'll say, what are you talking about? Nicest person here. And sure enough, it turns out that I had intuited correctly that there was something up with the person. And, so that's it's a little bit of a blessing, a little bit of a curse. You will find in life that whatever your greatest strength is also your greatest weakness. Those things are usually the same. And
I wouldn't I wouldn't go into detail, but we've had private conversations where something was either going on with me or somebody that I knew, and I mean, without even, and because I'm difficult to get information out of. I mean, but
tell me about
it. But somehow you just like drag, like you're just like, I'm in the vein, and we're not stopping until so I get what you're saying.
But it helps too. But it helps.
Absolutely, it does. But it's sort of, it can be like pulling teeth. Nobody wants to just go, hey, I'm or at least I don't. That's really not my thing. Yeah.
You're telling me that you're difficult to get information from, but you announce to hundreds of people that you want to traipse around the house wearing a trench coat and a wig.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Would you be singing I've Got to Be Free or something?
Probably sing something from like Fiddler on the Roof or something, Sunrise, Sunset.
I'm sorry. You'd be singing Fiddler on the Roof? If I Were a Rich Man or something?
Sunrise, Sunset, probably.
Sunrise, Sunset in that outfit is deeply camp. Actually, the funny thing is it's the perfect song for that outfit. It's camp. It's sort of camp-tastic, it goes with it. I have to admit that was a good call. Very John Waters.
We used to have to watch that movie in school, and it was just like, as a 12-year-old, you're just like, oh my gosh.
Fiddler on the Roof is a beautiful movie.
Not when you're 12.
Yeah, you're 12 years old. You don't understand the constructs of it. I mean, what do you think the point of Fiddler on the Roof is?
I couldn't tell. I couldn't even begin. It's probably about a guy who is a fiddler that's on a roof.
What's the symbolism of the Fiddler on the Roof?
That he likes to be above people when he plays his fiddle.
Okay. Let me give you a brief disquisition. The idea of Fiddler on the Roof is that he has 3 daughters, and in each case he has to compromise his cultural beliefs and his faith because of the person that the woman has chosen, that the daughter has chosen for a husband.
Yeah.
Instead of the marriages being arranged, and each one is more difficult to accept. And so, like a person trying to play a fiddle while balancing on the roof, he has to sort of find the compromise between, that's the symbolism of it, that it's easy to fall, to find a compromise between the importance of standards and morality and tradition and all of that, while also understanding that the heart of the law is love. And that if the law makes you alienate a loved one, you've probably missed the boat. So that, you see what I'm saying? So that
you got all of that from Fiddler on the Roof.
That's what it's about.
Not in my world.
Everyone knows that that's what Fiddler on the Roof is about. That's the whole point. That's what the lyrics are about.
Oh, well, I never even, like I said, Sunrise, Sunset stayed with me. Other than that, I didn't get a lot out of Fiddler on the Roof.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you an example of a song in that movie that's actually extremely theologically powerful. Is the part where the husband asks the wife, "Do you love me?" And she goes on and on saying, "I clean the house, I take care of the children, I've dealt with you for all these years or whatever. What do you mean, do you love me?" And he's not, "But do you love me?"
Yeah.
And the point of it is that we think of love as an emotion, or it's a thing that's in the viscera, that you feel it.
Right.
But she's thinking of love like a verb. Like you do a lot of things you don't want to do because you put the other person ahead of you and the family ahead of you. And this is a very important song. There's a lot of things in that musical that are so theologically and culturally heavy that musical has taken a place of its own in the world of musicals. But are you into theater? I mean, I play these songs on the piano, so I know them intimately.
No.
Not at all. You've never seen a Broadway show?
No.
Seriously? Not even one?
Like on TV or been to one?
Have you ever been to a show?
Yeah, I mean, I've been to the Nutcracker.
That's not a Broadway show.
No,
I mean, Broadway show, Annie, Phantom of the Opera, the music.
Oh, I've never even been to New York. No.
Music, Chorus Line, nothing. Oliver,
Cats?
not a thing. Which one?
Cats?
Cats is a musical, yes.
Yeah, but I didn't go to that either.
But yes, that's a musical.
No, I didn't do that.
No, I don't really hate it. It's okay. Betty Buckley was kind of awesome.
I don't even know who that is, but
you know who she is? She's the teacher in Carrie.
Yeah, I know who that is. No, I've never been to a Broadway show.
I have got to give you some culture. Why don't you come to New York?
Yeah,
I will play Henry Higgins to your Eliza. Let me teach you these things. Come on. Come on in. The water's fine. I'll introduce you to movies and museums and
right, but we have to also go. But we also have to go to a Yankee game.
I would do that. I'm okay with that, but it has to be a swap.
Okay, fine. I am.
We have to go to the Yankee game with you humming the tune from whatever it is that we just saw beforehand. Because you've discovered that you love it.
I have no problem with that. I'll hum whatever you tell me to. It makes no difference.
This is good. And we'll throw in a couple things that you would enjoy. We could eat like a sloppy Joe or something.
But see, like culture.
I would eat a sloppy Joe. I like sloppy Joe.
What is that? Why do you associate me with sloppy Joes?
I'm joking because it's the most dive food that we have in New York.
I haven't had. Yeah, if I can wear your trench coat, and I have.
You would need it. You would need it eating a sloppy Joe. I'll be honest with you.
It's been a long time since I've had a sloppy Joe.
People want me to take you to the opera.
I'll go. I will absolutely.
The thing is, I guarantee you, with your particular build and your appearance, if we put you in a tux, I could convince people that you are a tenor or a baritone from another country, and they would believe me.
Like
absolutely, we could pass you off. We'll say your name is, what name would you want? We have to give you a name that sounds more foreign.
Gustavo.
Yeah, Gustavo. That's good. Good.
Yeah.
Gustavo Diaz.
Gustavo Diaz. And then
yes, the great tenor.
Yeah.
You definitely
got that. And then you would say, "Hey, listen to this," and I'd go, "Sunrise, sunset."
Right. Well, you
sunrise, and then they'd go, "Gustavo Diaz."
And the best part is they would pretend they've seen you. It's my favorite thing that people do because I see it even in this pathetic, tiny little bit of public notoriety that I get doing this. If I'm introduced to someone, there is invariably a person who says, "Oh, I've seen you."
Yeah, right.
Oh, I love it. And I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah.
But of course you have seen me. I am Gustavo.
Yes,
the great.
Exactly. And you would do that voice. It would be fantastic. People will want a photo. You'll be tagged all over the internet. It'll be fantastic.
And they'll be like, "Who's this fat guy pretending to be an opera singer?" All right.
Well, okay. All right. But I would be fun. We're not really going to do it, but it'd be hilarious.
No, I am coming and we're going to a Broadway show.
Go to the baseball game. In fact, I have a relative who I think could probably get us very, very excellent seats at a baseball. if possibly.
And we'll bring can we bring a
cared.
videographer along?
Can we bring whom?
A videographer to capture this stuff?
Of course. I'm okay with that, but I'm not catching anything that's thrown, into the, what do you call those seats?
The bleachers?
To the bleachers. I'm not. I'll just let it give me a concussion or something. I'm not attempting. Even if they from the peanuts or whatever, I'm not interested. When they come around with the vittles, like the little snacks in the box or whatever. Do they still do that?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I'm not catching anything. Though there's something about that.
Sometimes they'll pass it down, but everybody touches it. That's a problem for me. So I want the throw.
I want you to know, just as a final ridiculous, because this is the comic relief portion of the show before we get into the serious. Yes, that's true, Gigi. I cannot catch anything. I couldn't even catch COVID. But the thing is, seriously, somebody asked me this once, and I've thought about it. It's a very good question. The question is, if you have to get up at a baseball game or a show or whatever, and you're in a row, right? So people are seated. You have to go to the bathroom. You can't help yourself. You've got to get up. Is the appropriate thing to do to get up where your rear end is facing them, or to turn around and have it be the other way? What's less inappropriate? Now, I personally think you shouldn't get up, but if you absolutely have to, which is the appropriate? Now, I want you to know, no one can answer this question that I've asked.
Well, because it's all really up for debate, but I think
like being a fiddler on the roof.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, I think that you probably, butt to face.
You don't think you should just try to walk like, so they just see your side?
Sort of. Yeah. You kind of try and keep it like, like the shoulder roll and then the whole way you have to go, excuse me.
I have to be honest that I get so disturbed about it that I don't get up. I think both are rude.
You just pee your pants or something?
Well, I've never gotten to that point. I mean, I don't have enuresis or something going on during the show.
I mean, why wouldn't you just get up?
I think it's rude. That's this hulking person getting up. Do you ever have a person be outrageously rude during a show, a staged show or a musical or a game or something? And
I've never been to a musical, but yeah. I've been to a theater.
That's rude. They answer the phone. They're filming it. I heard somebody tell a story one time that they were in a show and they were watching Grease and the phone rang and they answered it in the middle of the show. And they said, so that everybody could hear it, "I'm in Greece." And then the guy says, "Not the show. I mean, not the country, the show." And like he's having this conversation in front of the whole audience. This is the thing people do. Because they want to be more interesting, I think, than the show. That's why it bothers me. I don't want to be more interesting than try to be more interesting than the show by making it my scene. Well, anyway, so before we jump into calls, remember that I cannot answer clinical questions. It happens all the time that somebody's like, "Look, you can't answer a clinical question, but when I was 5 years old, and then I'm like, no. So we, because they try to finagle their way. I cannot do it. It's not appropriate.
My cousin's uncle said I wasn't breastfed long enough. What do you think, Doc?
I like when people try to make it sound like they're talking about somebody else.
Well, that's probably a smart move.
My cousin's name, who is me, said that they had a bad dream. I'm like, are you kidding me? Stuff. Like, I get it.
He said we were in heaven, but it looked like a TGI Fridays. Bring me more jalapeno poppers.
If you said that, I would yeet you out of the room immediately. So, are we ready?
We're ready.
You get your trench coat.
How would anybody take this serious? All right, Lisa. Lisa, go ahead. You're on with Dr. Gary and Josh, I guess. Yeah.
Trenchy.
Okay. So far, Lisa's not responding. Can you hear me, Lisa? Lisa has her mic. Lisa, unmute your mic, Lisa.
I need one of those horns that you put in your ear.
All right, we're gonna go. We'll come back. Let's go to
trench warfare.
Let's go to Joey H. Joey H. Go ahead. You're on. Where are you calling from?
Can you guys hear me?
Sure can. Joey, how are you?
Oh,
Please
okay.
say
What's
you're
up?
calling
What's up,
from a
guys?
theater. Are you calling from a theater in the middle of a show? It will be hilarious.
I'm calling a place closer than where Gustavo's from. I'm calling from the United States. I'm on the East Coast. We'll keep it at that.
We'll
Very
keep it
good.
at that. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So
Pretty big.
I want to start off by saying, Gary, Dr. Brucato, I can call you Gary, yes?
Yes.
Gary, I love your your appearances and hearing your take on things. I did get your book. I'm in the middle of it.
Oh.
And yeah, the book on evil, and so I want to. I'm halfway through it, and it's very interesting.
Do you like it?
I like it. I'm still. I can't grade it yet. I got to get through the first half because I see what's happening now. It's completing the case studies and it's going to another direction as it measures the gradations
it's
of
an odd
evil.
question to say, do you like it? Because it's so profoundly disturbing. I guess what I should say is, are you learning something from it?
Yeah, I'm learning, and I'm learning, but I can't.
You can't do the cases without the help.
Well, here's the thing. The whole thing about the evil thing, I have a problem with that.
Okay.
And it's a personal thing. And so I wanted to start off because your book is about the gradations of evil and people who commit these serial violence, serial murder. The Coburger case, starting with that, when the prison footage leaked out and was released, as the public, in my opinion, are trying to grapple with this, the why, and to get to know who in the hell is this guy, Coburger, right? That footage to me was so telling as far as we had a glimpse, in my opinion, of watching a couple of seconds of like hardcore mental illness and obsessive compulsive disorder, when he was wiping the Crocs, the way he was staring at the gate. And it's so crazy for me because I think it's the most heinous evil crime I've ever thought of. I would even say worse than Bundy in a way with that crime.
You notice you use the word evil.
Good. Say it again.
You use the word evil. You say you have a problem with the concept, but then you use the word.
As far as how people think of that word, I use the word only as far as how that word should be articulated and viewed, but that's
how we mean it in the book. See, that this is one of the great misnomers about the book. The point of the book is that Michael and I wanted to, well, the first part of the book is that Michael and I wanted to know why people go groping for supernatural explanations to things that are within the realm of human behavior. Yeah. We wanted to know what it takes for a person to do something bad enough that the average person says, that's not within human behavioral range, so they're evil. When in fact, every one of us is capable of doing those things. So what we wanted to know is what features of a person's personality or fantasy life are necessary for them to be motivated in a way that the average person would not get. How horrible, how shocking, how miserable. Now, I'll tell you, I've given presentations on the new evil top to bottom where we talk about, cases in category 1 all the way up to 22, and people walk out. I've had people, they leave roughly around 15. Once you get to category 15, they start getting nauseated, sick, horrified. I've had people yelling, oh my God, why did I listen to that? Whatever. And I say, well, the reaction you're having is the emotional reaction associated with calling something evil. That's the whole point. It's so bewildering and so disgusting that you have to think of it that way. Now, being a person who happens to be a Roman Catholic, there is no question in my mind that there's an overlap with theological ideas about evil. But I'm talking on a psychological level. How bad does somebody's behavior, personality, whatever, have to get for you to use that word? That's really what you want to think about when you're reading it. And regarding Coburger, the truth of the matter is that Coburger's, the score that he would achieve in that gradation, the maximum score that he could achieve is a 16.
Yeah.
The reason is
how high? How high?
16.
What would be a score? 16.
Right, and he would fall into that subtype where the person fancies himself a mastermind. Now, that type has a proclivity to become a serial killer. I am convinced that he would have probably become one if he was left to his own devices, because his motivation was so clearly sexualized in a sort of subtle way, and so clearly about domination over other people and fantasy based and violent pornography based inspired, that I have no doubt that if he had been left to his own devices, he probably would have thought, I mean, I think it's likely, would have thought about doing it again. And then what you would have had was a serial killer whose motivations were not overtly sexual. So he cannot get higher than a 16 in the scale. If there had been an overt sexual act, then it would be a 17. If there was any degree of torture, the lowest possible score is 18. 22 for severe torture and repeat murder, and 18 for non-protracted torture. So that the maximum that this individual could achieve would be a 16. Now, he probably would have fancied himself, more interesting than a lot of the other people, on the scale. But the reality is that when we take away the fact that the case is contemporary and was sort of mysterious and all that, the truth is he's a garden variety offender, and not one who is particularly interesting. See,
but Dr. Brucato, the relationship that has been exposed between him and his parents, eight phone numbers only in his on his phone, daily repeated conversations with both mother and father. Doesn't that change your ability for that score? That relationship, that bizarre relationship, very unique, that the other serial killers in your book did not have with their parents.
No, it has nothing to do with it. But I would say this: you make an interesting point. Let's say we were to find out after more thorough assessment that the truth is that he was partially motivated by something like very severe mental illness. Now, OCD is certainly a serious condition, but when we say severe mental illness, we're basically talking about psychosis. There is no indication that he suffered from a psychotic disorder. It would have been used at the level of the defense, not the slightest whiff. He certainly is obsessional and kind of peculiar. The question exists of whether he's on the spectrum, all of that. Okay. But as far as severe mental illness, like where a person possibly can't know the difference between right and wrong, you'd be thinking about psychosis. Now, if there had been a very severe mental illness present, somebody can receive a score of 13, because a 13 has to do with committing acts that look an awful lot like the people higher in the scale, but in the context of being an inadequate, mentally ill individual. Like, for example, Ed Gein, who was so schizophrenic that, he was a serial killer, but he was so schizophrenic that he was making a bodysuit out of skins and dancing in the moonlight, wearing skins and talking in the voice of his dead mother and believing that he had turned into her. That's a 13. See, but if he was not psychotic, the score would have been far higher. So
then
he is not.
That's good. How can you argue the 330-20 evaluations where someone is not guilty by reason of insanity, but they can still hold a conversation like me, you, or anybody in this chat room can hold?
You raise a very sophisticated question that we're actually addressing in the book that I mentioned earlier that I'm doing, which is that there are some forms of psychotic illness that are not disorganizing, so that a person can know the difference between right and wrong and still be totally psychotic. So, for example, if a person has what used to be called paranoid schizophrenia, a person can be very, very put together, very organized, but have an idea, oh, Chris is here, have an idea that's very, very strange. So a very organized guy gets a firearm, goes into, a hotel, starts killing people, and then they find he left a manifesto, and the manifesto says, I thought the pictures on the wall were talking to me and commanding that I do it, but the guy doesn't look disorganized. There are people who fall into that window, but the idea is that would be taken into consideration if somebody is prompted by something that takes away their ability to make a fair distinction between right and wrong and to really have free choice to do that. That's going to be taken into consideration at the level of the evaluation. There is nothing in the Coburger case that suggests anything except that he, in the full light of reason, had an idea, went in and did what he was going to do in a meticulous, hyper-organized way.
Yeah, but Dr. Brucato, had Coburger had he been bold enough to not take those plea deals and been convicted,
Yeah,
and went on the appeal train,
yeah.
he could have been eligible potentially for a 330-20, gotten into an institution and worked his way down into the outpatient setting and into the community.
I think the only thing that I'm aware of from when they evaluated him that could be used in that way is the autism diagnosis. And even now, the autism diagnosis, if it is accepted, so forth, that it could be used in a prison setting to say, I am overwhelmed by the stimuli around me. I am being, I'm not getting treatment, etc. in that way. But if what you're suggesting is that autism could have been used as a mitigating factor or getting him treatment in lieu of a prison setting, there may be truth to that. But that would have had to have been admitted into the courtroom. I mean, as I understand it, they never admitted the autism diagnosis. Isn't that true, Chris? They didn't accept it unless he testified himself. Wasn't that the story?
I believe so. Yeah, that Ann Taylor had the 11.
Right.
Yep.
So and as the other thing to bear in mind is not all states have insanity pleas. That's the other thing. That doesn't exist everywhere. But you are correct that an argument could be made if he truly had autism.
And one of those
is a mitigating factor. Yeah.
Idaho doesn't.
Idaho doesn't. Yeah.
No, please go ahead.
And the reason I bring this up also partly is because
I think these are very smart questions. I really appreciate them. They're sophisticated questions, actually.
Great question.
Thank you. Well, here's another. The thing I get concerned about with Coburger when I observe that little moment of that prison leak is we're looking at someone who had the obesity. He had the drug heroin, not just any drug. Now we're talking not a guy who smoked weed. A heroin addict that went into rehab and stole his sister's phone, and his sister, a social worker, actually assumed that he was the murderer. Let's say that he spends enough time in solitary confinement that he actually experiences a complete mental breakdown, a complete psychotic break. He could be moved into a forensic facility. Isn't that correct?
Theoretically possible. If people have true mental health needs in a prison setting, generally they will be addressed.
But Dr. Gary, aren't most people that commit those kinds of crimes, that there is something not completely right about them? And also for an insanity plea, you have to show that what you did, you don't know the difference between right and wrong. So
this was a mass murder. The vast majority of mass murders, my own work proved it, are not severely mentally ill in the sense of being psychotic.
I'm not even saying
they have other things. They have personality problems and coping skills and other things. What they don't tend to have are sexual motivations. That's a serial killer thing.
Yeah, but
what I think going on here looks more like a serial killer motivation.
The insanity plea, or trying to get him moved from somewhere because he may or may not be quote unquote insane, and however that's defined. The fact of the matter is he went through great lengths to cover up what he had done, which shows that he knows the difference between right and wrong. So I mean,
you're talking about the whole McNaughton kind of idea, right? You know the difference. And the thing is, by that standard, even if we weren't dealing with Idaho, right, by that standard, there could be no argument that this guy knew precisely what he was doing. I agree with you that there's there's some stuff going on with him that somebody will sort out. And if there is a true mental health component, somebody will deal with it. But the reality is that as it stands, what it looks like is, he lived a restricted mechanical life. He's sort of weird, he's sort of obsessional and all that. But this guy, in the cool light of reason, took a blade, went into a house that he had visited 23 times, if I'm not mistaken, and played out a fantasy that seems to have been inspired by previous serial killers, some kind of fantasy of being, of dominating, controlling, and violent pornography. And there is no arguing that motivation is perverse. And those other things happen at the level of a personality and a fantasy problem. But you are correct that something could happen in prison that affects him because he's a control freak. He absolutely is, going to be under a lot of stress there. But
no contact with his only support system, mother and father. Total loss of basic contact with them, routine contact with them. He could have a complete breakdown.
Well, we'll see. I mean, that's the whole thing. But I think that you are correct that now once he leaves the public eye, which was definitely a mechanism of control for him, I think. The court behavior, and Taylor, that was a mechanism of control for him. The way he acted during the statements, that was a mechanism of control. In other words, now you have a guy who's lost control, except that he's been secretive about his motives, although I think you can deduce them pretty well. And, he's got that power. And he's in this cell walking around like a panther, in a cage, right? And he's afraid that something's going to happen to him. Probably that somebody is going to essay him or attack him. I don't think he's winning any popularity contests anytime soon. And I think that as he deals with his fear, he's going to increase his need for control. So that's the kind of guy that's going to, meticulously keep shining the shoes, that kind of thing, because he needs to feel that he is doing something that is preventing something bad from happening. It is a classic obsessional quality. I have to tell you, I have a lot of patients that do this. I have seen people do it in private life. People in the audience have probably done this. But a lot of people, when they are feeling overwhelmed and scared by something, they become obsessed with something completely insignificant, right? So you have the friend who, his marriage is falling apart, and you say, you want to talk about it? No, I'm busy. What are you doing? I have to own every single book in such and such a series, and I'm running around to all the different stores to get them. I want them all on the shelf. And I'll be like, this is what you're dealing with? I don't know. I just want them all on the shelf. And the person is obsessing over that because they don't want to deal with something that's out of control. You see what I'm saying? We all do things like that. The classic example is you have a paper due for school. It's the last minute. You had 3 months to do it. So before you sit down at the computer to do it at 3 a.m., you have to clean the whole house. You ever see people who do things like that? I'll tidy up and then I'll do the paper. It's that thing of needing a sense of a grip. And I think that's what you got going on with him. I also think that probably, there's truth to the idea that he's in danger there. It's very hard to believe that something isn't going to happen to that guy there. I mean, Chris will tell you, I think he's correctly anxious. Don't you, Chris?
And let me just say this really quick. And Joey, thank you for the call.
It's a fascinating call. I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
We dropped him down. Absolutely fantastic call. Go ahead, Chris.
Feel free to write me, Joe. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Well, having spent 15 years in prison, no, absolutely he should be afraid. They're putting soap in socks as we speak, and they're trading cigarettes for his virginity. I mean, let's get real. That he's a high risk right now.
Big time, yeah.
And we agreed that this is the kind of personality that would, as a consequence of that fear, become more controlling over petty, silly things. That's what people like that do. They repetitively organize the room, and
you already saw what he's filled out. He's like, I didn't get my, chickpeas or, niblets or whatever.
Exactly. Obsessing over that because it's a sense of injustice and wanting to be on the radar for attention.
I deserve to be treated fairly. And, and by the way, that's not how prison works, by the way, like at all. I mean, it's a terrible place to be.
Right.
And that's why you don't commit those crimes, because you're not going to live a very comfortable life at all. And for the rest of his life, because he will be high profile for the rest of his life, that he's going to have to look over his shoulder. I mean, people are going to know who he is and where he's at.
Well, one of the questions that I get a lot about Coburger whenever I talk about him is somebody says, if you could ask one question of Coburger, what would it be? Like, they want to know what would interest me about him. To be honest with you, the more I know about the case, the more I want to know about his relationship with religion. I want to know if he was raised in a religious home, if he has some kind of extreme sense of guilt, some kind of ideas about women that are related to that. I'm very interested to know if this is somebody who felt tremendous shame and secretly had sexual ideas that were not acceptable. I want to know all of that. His dynamic with religion and with discipline and with guilt and all of that, because the obsessional core of him makes me wonder about it. And I haven't heard anything about that. Like, for example, was he a churchgoer? Did he have a pastor that he used to chat with all the time? Or a priest that he would talk to all the time about some of his ideas? You know, did he have people that glued him together like that? Did he ever have a conscience? You know, was there a time when he had a moral compass and it went haywire? I want to understand that about him, because I think that people who fragment like this, we have to find the source of the cloak that you're putting on. I have to know what that is.
Yeah.
You know, you understand what I'm saying? I mean, Chris, do you know anything about whether he was religious?
I know his parents, or his mother for sure, and he came from somewhat of a religious background, but also, you know, the fact that he was picked on so much as a kid, right, because of his weight. I mean, all that information's now starting to flow. But I would be really interested in talking to him. You know, I think we had talked about this before, but if I was the investigator that would have had the first opportunity at him, I would have had them set him up in the busiest part of the police station and just kind of do what we did with Wilson. You know, we put him in a corner about 18 inches off the floor or off the wall in a single chair, and we put him in the middle of all the action for a dopamine hit.
For
And
attention or something?
I'm sorry?
For like a feeling of attention? Where would
Yeah.
the dopamine come from?
So he's in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Right? He's in the middle. You know, he's watching.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, he's watching everything go around, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, get that psyche moving on him, because, you know, remember, part of his fantasy was to become a law enforcement officer. and so plug him in, put him right in the middle of everything as it's going down, and, you know, get that dopamine going, and then walk in and say, you know, it was interesting. They started the conversation with, what did you think about that SWAT situation out there? I mean, that's kind of a weird question to start with when, you know, you potentially have a quadruple homicide suspect in front of you.
Right.
But I think they were trying to kick in that dopamine, and they could have done that very easily by plugging him into the bullpen, in what we call the bullpen.
That's very interesting, Chris. And people in the audience are saying that they found in the paperwork that he was raised Roman Catholic, but that he ultimately was one of these people who most encountered spirituality in nature.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sort of like Lincoln used to say. But it's interesting to think about that too. I do think that it's also interesting when you think about him saying that he was stargazing, you know, and all of that. But the reason I'm curious about it is because I think the fragmentation of his personality is strongly suggestive of guilt or feeling ashamed in some way. I'd call it moral guilt, but just an idea that there's things you have to keep hidden. He certainly had a hidden life.
Well, and he says that, right? One of the questions, remember, back to detectives.
Yeah.
And I think Gilbertson said it. He says, you know more. Why are you here? So what he's done is he's flipped it back to the investigators. And I thought he was testing them. Okay. He didn't want to talk about baseball. I mean, yeah, okay, yeah, he's into baseball, but, you know, small talk about baseball. No, he wanted to get down to business. And I think, and I believe today he still wants to get down to business. So if I was to approach him, I would want to start with, you know, I would want to start with, quite frankly, I'd go right to Brian. How did you leave the sheath? What happened? I mean, I would just kick it off. Let's go, because he wants to tell everybody, and you know, I don't think you know, I don't know if the mental health issue is such a big issue for him. I think it is for Ann Taylor, but more importantly, I think for him, he realizes he didn't cross the T's or dot the I's, and that's why he came back. And it was interesting. I had, you know, we were just on talking about CrimeCon, and I had this one gal, her name is Kelly. She asked me, she goes, you know, I have a theory, or she told me I have a theory. I said, well, what's your theory? And she goes, you know, I think during the struggle with Kaylee, because she was fighting, that she actually grabbed the sheath. And he panicked when Xana came in and forgot about it. And that's when he turned his attention towards her. And I thought, well, that's a really interesting thought.
But why aren't her prints on it?
That's what I do.
Well, because
the DNA is on the button. Why isn't hers on there?
Well, it doesn't necessarily mean you're always going to get that. Okay.
True.
I mean, you definitely are going to get the print on the snap. He's just saying because in her thought process, it was such a disheveled fight. You know, it went from an organized to a disorganized problem, which we've talked about, right, Gary, at length, and Josh. But
what
I thought
when he loses control? What's in the closet in the house?
Yeah. And I thought
that outside, disheveled on the inside, right?
Right. I mean, and that's where I think when Brian, this is a very interesting question that the suspect asked the police. And here it is, quote, "You know more. Why are you here?" Right? Put the math on that, Gary. Put the brain into that one. Why is he asking that question? Because he's exploring that avenue and basically taking them and tempting them, you know, to let's have a conversation. And so what he really did was he flipped the flow of trust back to them. That was slick. I got to give him an E for effort on that.
Well, I mean, the slickness and the, you know, so forth, it suggests some ability to read other people's plans and feelings and thoughts and so forth in a way that we would not expect of you know, someone who's disturbed or on the spectrum or whatever. But who knows? I mean,
well, but that goes back to your point.
Such a mechanical
on the scale of 16, right? This guy is methodical. He's thinking through this, and
very methodical.
Yeah, I mean, and so, you know, I thought that was pretty interesting.
But one of the people in the audience said something I think is very true, which is that this is the type of offender that you might envision one day embracing religion. You know, that he has a lot in common with the type of offender who, at least whether it's phony or not, tells the public that he has discovered that and so forth. There are a lot of offenders like that. Some of them are telling the truth. Some of them I think are not. Mm-hmm. But there are offenders I've written to, and they'll send me back a religious tract, you know, and tell me I don't talk about that anymore. I'm born again. You know, that's my past life. I don't talk about that anymore. Examples of offenders that, you know, it's publicly known, that is like Tex Watson's, you know, Tex Watson from the Charles Manson murders, David Berkowitz, son of Sam. And there are a few. I'm sure you guys have encountered offenders that will tell you that they have embraced that. But I think yes, Watts. Is that true? Chris Watts? Are they talking about Chris Watts? Has embraced religion?
Yeah, he has. Yeah.
I mean,
and he said, God forgive you.
I don't know their souls, you know, but I think that, you know, but it's interesting, you know, that because what I think the person's picking up on is that when you've got that kind of fragmented, obsessional kind of personality, you could see a person kind of going like, the way to undo this is now I'm going to wipe that away and I'm a new person and I don't want to talk about that anymore. It's all buried in the past, you know, that kind of thing. But we'll see. It'll be very interesting. So Sweet Soul is who has a tendency to be very frank. It's gently prompting us to stop chat.
There's a few people that are doing that,
yes.
but I will, get to the calls when we get to them. I mean, that's just how it goes. But Chris, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it.
I'm thrilled to see you. We missed you.
Thank you for the invite.
Awesome. All right, Marie, where are you calling from? Go ahead. You're on the air.
Hi, I'm calling from Manchester. I've called in before. Spoke to Dr. Gary yet. Hi, Josh, Dr. Gary, Chris. I've got a personal experience, and I know Dr. Gary can't comment, but there is a specific question I could ask about it. When I was around 6, I had a brother-in-law SA me until the age of 13. It stopped, and then when I was 18, he found me one night when I was out for my 18th birthday. In the UK, you can drink at 18. And I was out with my friends, and I went to a bathroom. He followed me, and he heard and basically left me for dead. I'm 56, so you're talking 50 years ago, and then 30 something years ago. When I reported him to the police when I was 18, they were fantastic. A particular detective inspector was really impressed with my statement, but I've missed something out. When I was 11, I went to my mother and told her that it was happening, and she said, we mustn't tell anybody because it will cause upset within the family, and we just keep it quiet and we keep you away from him. Unfortunately, that didn't work because I had to go and babysit. The questions for Josh would be, how do you move on and try to forgive the person that's done this thing to you and made you, suffer this experience? To Dr. Gary, it would be, how can a person groom an entire family? Because, like I said, my whole family turned against me, and still to this day, even though he's passed away, still don't believe me. When I went, and for Chris as well, I'm glad Chris is here. When I went to the police, the detective inspector said it was an awesome statement. He believed me, but then it got passed on to the SA crimes, and my cousin was a police officer in there, and she told them that I was a liar, and they made me sign a piece of paper to make it go away. The last thing I'll say about it is, he had been prosecuted for it once before, and the laws in this country are unlike the laws in America, where you can find out if someone's got a history. We can't, because of Sarah's law. We can't find out. So, like, if my sister could have found out, I'm sure she wouldn't have gone, down that route. But we've got this law that you can only do it if you're an employer, a teacher, someone's working for you, and possibly a neighbour, but you have to have a direct link. Now, that only came in a few years ago because of Sarah Payne. Yeah, that's it.
Well, I really want Chris and Josh to kind of address this more than I will. So I'm going to say briefly, and then I want to give the floor to them. But you'll notice that in the story you told, there was one person, this detective, who believed you
Mm.
and basically told you weren't crazy and that there was validity to the story. And of course, you found out that the person had previously had a history, which is what you generally expect in someone who's committed such a repetitive, vile act of sexual nature. And what I want to emphasize is how important it is to be that figure to someone who comes to you and says, I have this terrible secret, this terrible thing happened to me. And person should say to you, I believe you. And I don't think you're crazy. And I'm delighted that you had that one person in the story who did.
Yeah.
I have at many points in my life, and I have no doubt that Josh and Chris have also had to be that figure to a person who comes and tells a story. And I will say to the individual, I don't think you made this up. I think it has to be taken seriously, and I'm here for you, and let me help direct you to where you have to go. And that can save a person's life. I have also spoken to people who were suicidal following abuse, and they did not take their lives because they encountered a person or a group or an agency or a police officer or a nurse or a psychologist or a psychiatrist or a family member who validated them and made them feel that they didn't make it up in their head and they're not crazy. And whatever. Especially when you're dealing with a groomer, the groomer will gaslight you into thinking that you misunderstood a gesture, you misunderstood the touching, this was all innocent, how dare you, So I just want to say, before I hand it off to these two experts, how extremely important and beautiful it is that you had that one person in this whole story who validated you. Do you understand what I mean when I say that could save a person's life?
Yeah, it meant an awful lot because now I struggle with why my mother didn't address it. So I've got and that's where Josh could come in and possibly comment, like how you feel, how do you step forward and forgive those people? I did once ask her, why did you not do anything about it? She regretted it. She said it wasn't the thing to do at the time and it could have broke the marriage up. And I just said, fine, okay, I forgive you. But I really still do have that struggle to forgive,
Right.
to move on, to forgive.
The last thing I'm going to say, but because I cannot talk about your particular
I know,
case, but I will say, and I don't know what went on in your story, so just take this, as a general point. But I have seen a lot of situations like that, and a lot of times it has to do with the idea that the person is in a kind of denial that this could have happened, and sometimes a protective instinct makes a person think that that they love you so much that they can't imagine something like that happen to you, and they can't accept it, or they think that they have to put you in a cocoon because talking about it is like assaulting you again. That sometimes happens, and I can understand that. There are other reasons which we won't get into, but I have seen situations where I have had someone explain to me why they felt like they had to put someone in that kind of cocoon. And a lot of it has to do often with extreme inability to accept that has happened to someone that you love. And I mean, if you had a loved one come to you and tell you a story like that, and they were someone who meant the world to you, the idea of it would horrify you, and you'd have a hard time seeing that. Now, hopefully you move past that and you say, but we have to do what we have to do to help you here. But denial is a very powerful force. Every one of us have at some point in our life simply tried to deny the existence of something because it was uncomfortable. But I just want to put that out there, that people's motives are very mixed for why they shut down when you talk to them about this kind of thing. And without the person to tell you what their motive was, you don't know. Is your mother still with you?
No, she's not. No.
Oh, see, that's something I would like Josh and Chris to talk about. Is the forgiveness of a person who isn't even here to tell you what their motives were and what they were thinking. But let me pass now to
Chris, did you?
Thank you.
Yeah, but you see the value in what we're saying here.
Did you want to give that a go before I do?
Go ahead, Chris.
Whatever you feel.
Go
Maria,
ahead.
is that Maria, right?
It's Marie. Yeah.
Marie.
Yes. Marie. Well, first of all, I want to say just right from the get-go, I mean, thank you for trusting us.
Yeah.
And for, sharing this type of information. It takes a tremendous amount of strength to do that. And then, of course, I think the second thing, obviously, is, it's not your fault. All of that burden belongs to him. And the fact that you shared with us that your mom, kind of acted as a barrier, right? As if I understand that correctly.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine how you must have felt and are still feeling, through that whole process. So how have you been processing this through all of these years? I mean, you said you were 13. Is that when it ended? And then there was a 5-year stretch and it picked up again at 18?
Yeah. I've had good therapy, but I still struggle. I put my concentration into helping victims of crime. So I volunteer for victim support and help other people. And
good for you.
I work in social work as well. So, I work with people with learning difficulties, learning disabilities. But it's the thing that I feel more, the abuse isn't front and center anymore. It's the fact that I didn't get justice as well, because I was treated poorly by the police. It's the fact that families still believe him, even though he had a previous conviction. I think it's not getting justice and being swept under the carpet, oh, you're a liar, so we're not taking it any further. I think that's the hardest thing to deal with. I'm trying to forgive all the family. And I was going to ask Josh, what do you think writing them a letter expressing how I feel? I don't know. Do I get any answers ever? I can deal with how it's affected me. I'm a mother of 2 boys, and I've always protected them. I've got a granddaughter. I will always do the right thing, and if anything happened, I will be just the advocate. Do anything I could.
Well, let me first off start by saying that I'm absolutely sorry that happened to you. Nobody should have to go through these things, and unfortunately people do every day, because there's a lot of very evil people in the world, selfish people who use other people to fulfill, their sick and twisted desires and or, do things that affect other people for the rest of their lives with almost no regard for anybody else. Just that's just a thing that we deal with in the world. Now, when it comes to forgiveness, I have this, there's something obviously that I've went through and still go through and fight with, and wrestle, and forgiveness is sort of kind of relative. I mean, there's a lot of different types of forgiveness. There's a lot of different ways to forgive. There's a lot of different ways to look at it. Now, depending on who you're trying to forgive, you know, I was told a lot by a lot of different people that you have to forgive because it's the right thing to do, and it will, you know, make you feel better.
Yeah.
That's the simplistic thing somebody on the outside saying. Well, I don't subscribe to that.
No.
I think, and if anybody, you know, disagrees with me, you know, God bless you, but I do think that there are things that are done in this life that are unforgivable. My father killing my mother was unforgivable to me.
Yeah.
Now, do I harbor hate? I don't know. Sometimes I do.
Yeah. I feel that.
Do I feel better some days because of it? You know, because I try to let it go sometimes. It's peaks and valleys. And I don't think that I will ever find the peace that I require. And I'm okay with that because there are other things in my life that are so much more important than banging on about this person who didn't give much enough thought of me and my sister and my family. 30 something years later. Why do I have to forgive him?
No.
To me, the forgiveness needs to be between him and God. If that's who he chooses to reach out to. Now, is it something that you require? Do you feel like you need to forgive, that you need to let things like this go?
Not for him. No, I'm exactly the same as you. But for the people, like, I've got 2 sisters, 2 brothers, and I feel like they're never going to believe me under any circumstance. But I want to confront them and ask them why.
And you have every right to. And the thing is that you have to be prepared.
To
hear
being closed down.
Yeah. Because not everybody is as well thought out as you. Not everybody has been through the things that you've been through, and they don't see it through the lens that you do. And like I had people go, "He's your dad," and I said, "So what?
So what?
Who cares? Like you're supposed to." And look, there is a part of me that obviously biologically loves my father. It's really, sometimes it used to really bother me a lot because I'm going, and it was just a constant reminder. It's biological. You can't help it sometimes. I used to be like, how great would it be to have like my dad and my mom at a baseball game? I used to want to be, I want to tell somebody that I was good at this, or this is what I'm doing. And, I had my grandparents and they stood in that gap very well, but there was a generation, an extra generation between us. And it was hard at times to feel like, you're getting exactly what everybody else seems to get. I used to look at other with their fathers and mothers that were young and go, man, I wonder what that's like. I don't call anybody mom. I don't say dad. I don't want somebody to go, hey, dad, how you doing? Hey, mom, how are you? That's never been a part of my vocabulary, really.
No.
And it's just the way, it's just how life has worked out. But your brothers and sisters, I don't know. I assume that they love you.
No,
but
I don't think they do.
Well,
I don't think they do. There's a 25-year gap between me and the eldest sister. My mum always said I was a menopause baby. So the next one to me is 12. So 12 years. So the first 3 had their own children when I was born. So we didn't really have much of a relationship. I was just there when they came around to see my mum and dad. We didn't do much together, but I did with their children because we were the same age. So I had more of a relationship with their children.
and and you, you want to forgive them, or you want them to believe you, or both? Because if they don't believe you by now,
they're never going to.
Probably not. I mean, that's, look, things change. Hearts aren't all, hearts do soften, and I hope that is the case. But I mean, it's been a really long time, and I used to think about this saying all the time that my grandpa told me. He said, I said, I want whoever it is to know that, either I didn't do this, or that I feel a certain way about this, or whatever. And he would always say, sometimes, Josh, it's okay for you to know, just for you.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Well, one thing I want to say before we let you go is that, you impress me as a person, and I'll say why. You have to remember that what happened in this situation, this horrendous thing that happened to you, it doesn't seem to have fully penetrated your soul. There is a goodness to you as a human being. Yeah. And what'd you say, Josh?
Big time. I mean, I could just tell.
Very clear from talking to you.
No
and it's
question.
Very obvious that despite the fact that the world has been cruel to you, that you do something for a living that's very empathic and very you're nicer to people than they've been to you.
Yeah, I hope so.
Right. And I want you to understand that there is in my experience, that this mismatch often exists. People whose bodies have been violated, mocked, disregarded, so forth, often have souls that are very dazzling, as opposed to some people that everybody is drooling over or drawn to physically, or a person that feels like they meet the world's standards, are often people who have very vile souls.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think there is something about you, a spiritual kind quality to you that I think has been untouched by whatever happened to you. It's very important to understand the dignity of what is in you. I want you to try to remember that. Think of, like, when I was a little kid, I went out in the yard and I found this. I was digging in the dirt, and in the mud, I found this kind of ball, this perfect sphere that was made out of like a rocky mud. And I was curious about it, so I chiseled it off, and inside of it was a marble, a very beautiful, like a children's marble. And that image has always stayed in my mind about certain people. There are certain people that get the mud caked on, but underneath, they're a kind of a dazzling marble. See? And somebody just has to have the sensitivity to take the mud off. And look, see? And I want to say that to you because I have a feeling that you have whatever happened to you, it's very clear that you have a special calling in life to use this terrible thing that happened to you to go out and show other people that they have a marble under the mud. See what I'm saying? And you do that. So whatever happened to you, remember, forgiveness, and I don't want to turn this into a clinical conversation. I'm going to be general.
No.
You have to ask yourself the question, who is forgiveness for?
Correct.
Is it for the other person, or is it so that the hatred that's bubbling in you, that's making it impossible to move on, can be set aside so that somebody doesn't keep taking from you what they have already taken? And if you view it that way, there's a practicality to it.
True.
But I think it's a very personal thing. But I want to say to you that 2 minutes of talking to you, it becomes very clear that you are one of those people that underneath the mud of what has happened to you is someone very special. And I know that sounds corny, but I really do mean it.
No,
so,
thank you.
Thank you. I'm very happy that you're okay and that you exist.
Not only that,
thank you so much.
but doing your advocacy work, you're going to run into people that have similar situations that you have. Repeat, somebody maybe not believe them. Maybe that they put the blame, that happens a lot, victim blaming. There's a lot of that these days. And you're going to change the way somebody thinks about what happened to them
Yeah,
because
yeah.
of what happened to you. And
That's right.
that
That's
in
my
itself
goal. Yeah, yeah,
is surviving. And that is taking, like Dr. Gary said, a muddy situation and finding that perfect round marble that was covered up deep in the mud. Because I felt that too. I felt like to this day, I still feel like I'm digging out, under stuff. It's difficult. I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
We all have these certain traumas that we're dealing with that I know Chris, when you lost your son, I'm sure that you went through all sorts of emotions, and you're mad at God, you're mad at whoever's near you that you're close to. You're just mad, you're just angry. And I get it, but I can tell that you are a sweet,
thank you.
and I'm sure that your children reflect that as well, because you're very thought out and very thoughtful. And I'm very honored that you called and spoke with us about
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Evil, darkness, it has a way of, like, you experience it, so you go out and give it, and it creates a ripple effect. And in the chain of it, you have to have that one person who says, the buck stops with me.
Yes. Yeah.
No more of this.
Yeah.
This darkness has to be taken out of the world. And the way to do that is, I'm not going to give back hatred. And what I'm trying to say to you is, in a very spiritual kind of way, there are a lot of things in this world, addiction and abuse and whatever, that ultimately have at their heart having to come to the realization that under the mud, there is something of value there that is worth loving. And it takes a very special person to be the person who helps a person see that. That's one of the most godly callings a person could have.
Absolutely.
In this world. And I think if that's what you are called to do for a job, to love people for a living, best thing in the world, good for you. So you just keep on doing that, okay?
And thank you, Marie. And
thank you.
A great deal.
Yeah. And by the way, I've seen Les Mis. That makes me cry. And La Traviata, that's my favorite opera.
Well, that's an interesting one to be your favorite, right?
I don't know.
He's got a whole thing about the theater.
But Les Mis, I think Josh should see Les Mis.
Why do you think you'd like that one?
Because
just the characters, it's very depressive, but it's at the same time, I don't know how to explain it. It's tragic, but it's enlightening, and the characters are all so different, and there's comedy in it.
That's true.
So it's a weird juxtaposition,
Right. And La Traviata is about a woman who was judged for for sexual experience.
Dr. Gary always reads the Cliff Notes. I mean, he knows what he knows what all, like, Chris, you missed it earlier. And Marie, thank you again for your call. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right.
He went into this whole soliloquy of what the fiddler on the roof meant, because
it's very profound.
It's not.
All right, Chris, wasn't that a beautiful call?
That was beyond. Yeah, she's, I've
could feel God in the room, when you get a call like that.
There's always that principle of we forget that the Savior went into the Garden of Gethsemane and he fell 3 separate times. And the last one, he fell on his face. I often ask myself, the first one, was that for me? And my frailties, my weaknesses, and then the second, and then the third, ultimately. But what she reminded me of is the damsel that you just mentioned at the door when Peter denied Christ 3 times. There was a damsel at the door. We forget about her. And the other disciple, it says, went in with him. I often ask myself, who is that other disciple? There is, there's some context to that it could have been Mary Magdalene. And because, two or more witnesses in Jewish political tradition at that time were necessary. But it says the other disciple went in with him. The other thought it could have been Mark, who fled from the garden naked when the Roman soldiers came to arrest Christ. But because it said it was a damsel, I hear in Maria's voice the Savior's understanding in relationship to the pain is equal to the love. And her love from God is much greater for her than it is in relationship to the pain that she's experienced from him, the other guy, her uncle.
Mm.
And I always, whenever I've interviewed many sexual assault victims, before we even catch the suspect sometimes, I try to remind them that they're empowering the rest of the world by their strength. And the fact that she just even shared that on YouTube was extremely powerful. Extremely powerful.
And I think that it feels sometimes a privilege to be let into the soul of a person like that. I mean, they're showing you a kind of nakedness where nakedness was once paired with being violated. And now it gets reborn into a safe thing to bear your nakedness and what's inside of you to someone. It's very, very important. And I hope that anyone who ever has somebody come to them and share a story like that knows that you have to give the message, I believe you. This is valid. Whatever you're feeling is valid. You didn't do anything to deserve this. Now let me help you. Let me help you get to where you have to go. And it's so important. You could change a person. You could save a person's life.
Well, it's an evolution, right, Gary? I mean, she started out as a child, a victim. That's enough right there for anybody just to not know what the next step is for the next 50 years, 40 years, 30 years.
Chris, imagine Maddie Soto, if she had not died, what her life would have looked like. When she became aware that she got into some kind of trusting dynamic with a paternal figure who normalized filming her and making her perform perverse acts. And then she achieved an age at which she started to understand what was happening to her and started to tell someone, and the person said, "What did he do? What?" Right. I mean, just think. What would her life have looked like? I mean, Josh, you ever think about that?
Yeah, I do.
Maddie Soto's life would have looked like.
That's one of the things I always think about, like, especially when a young person is tragically lost, and are killed. I always wonder, what could have been, or what it would have looked like, I mean, that particular case is so horrendous. What that girl, that young lady and child at one point had to go through, it's almost unimaginable.
It's unimaginable. Michael Stone, God rest his soul, who I miss every day. I wish that I had recordings of my chats with him, because we used to have these very profound conversations. I mean, it's very hard for me to explain what it was like for me and Michael to have a chat. There was no small talk. The conversation was very serious and very deep and very complicated. And one conversation that we had was about Colleen Stan, the woman who Cameron Hooker, vile, perverse offender, kidnapped and kept in a coffin for 23 hours a day for 3 years, and took out 1 hour a day for SA and torture, and then ultimately made go to work for him. And she had to learn to dislocate her limbs, to live inside the coffin and eat and use the toilet and everything else. And now she's like a helper of other people in the world. And what happened is it got time for the trial, and the question came up, he never killed anyone. Should this guy get life? And Michael said to me, Gary, there are some people in this world who have done things to someone that is so terrible that what they did is worse than killing them. And
Yes.
there has to be a sentence somehow worse than being put away for life.
I agree
You
with
know,
you.
like, in other words, what you do to someone like that is worse than murder. You see what I'm saying? If, let's say, Maddie Soto had lived, her whole life would have been taken from her.
Correct.
It would have been death in life. And I don't know how to make sense out of that. Every day of my life, I have to sit with a person who tells me a story that is so horrendous, and they say, what justice could I have? Am I supposed to know the answer to that question? What justice could they have? All they could do is go out and give a little bit of it to someone else. But Chris, you know what I mean about this, right? There are some offenses that are worse than killing a person.
Yeah, they're unimaginable. And that's the fascinating part about this dynamic right now with the three of us, the panel.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you've got Josh up there who is present when his mother is executed. You've got you with the many years of working with these souls that have been broken.
I'm glad you say souls, Chris.
Yeah, broken by humanity. And you've got, you know, my 2 cents of, somebody asked me at CrimeCon the other day, they said, where's Dr. Brucato? And I said, he's out healing. That's how I responded. He's out healing with patients. And she goes, well, you know, what's the difference between you and him? That was the question. And I said, well, I said, my job is, you know, to catch the lion. And his job is to study the lion. It takes both jobs with 2 different mentalities.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, that's a good answer. I said, yeah, I don't know where it came from, but it just showed up. And, you know, but that's the principle here and the human soul is capable. I can visualize certain crime scenes that I've been on where it's been so horrendous.
Yeah.
And you stand in that room and you can smell the death through the drywall. You can smell it outside. And then as you're going into that room, you can smell the blood. You can sense the evil that's in that room.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of figure out, okay, well, I need to have a spiritual dynamic to this, whatever that is. And I need to be that spiritual dynamic. I need to listen to the intensity of the universe speaking in that room, to the intensity of the crime. And I think that was one of the things that I took away, and I still take it away on a daily basis, where, you know, you can't fix it. You can only, and sometimes you can't understand it, nor will you be able to make sense of it, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you hear, you know, sweet people like that, like Maria, who have experienced life through pain, and it gives you strength. It says, okay, yeah, we can keep moving here. we can keep moving and we can keep doing this. And, you know, that's a fascinating dynamic. It's a fascinating dynamic. I've always loved the cause and the effect principle.
Yeah. How beautiful to think that's how you think of me.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
It means a lot to me. I
So
mean,
many people,
that's how you see me.
they love you, Gary. I mean, just, you know, that was one of the things that Karen and I, you know, we came away with, you know, these are really good, super great people. And, you know, it takes all the other stuff, you know, and you just, you know, put it in a container and say, thank you very much, you know, but here's a shipping receipt. We're sending it back. You know, it's a defective product. And you go, okay, whatever that means. But, you know, I love the cause and the effect piece of life. I really, really do. And, you know, it was neat. It was neat to listen to her. What I think one of the most tragic situations I experienced from a rape victim was she was a mother, 4 kids, 3 boys and a 14-year-old girl. And they got into a domestic, she and her husband. They went to a hotel. The wife took the 4 kids. And a suspect broke in and held everybody at gunpoint, took mom, essayed her on a bed. It was 2 queen beds in the room. And then was holding the daughter, the 14-year-old daughter, at gunpoint while raping her mother. He leans over and says, "You're next," to this little 14-year-old girl. That is stuck with me.
Oh yeah.
That's a hard one.
Yeah.
That's a hard one. That's evil.
You
saw it with your own eyes. And what is there to say about that? I mean, let's just say, Chris, that all 3 of us are people either by choice or by vocation have had to come to grips with the fact that life is not all rosy. And the work that all of us have done and the things that we have experienced have cheated all of us to a certain extent out of the joys and illusions that a lot of people have that make the biggest problem they have in the world. You know, what flavor noodle salad are we having at the picnic? But the reality is that there is no such illusion here. Can't do it. But we use it. We use it to help people. And that's when we go to bed at night. The reason we can believe that there is some love in the world is that we've tried to embody it. And that's what I think it is that other people have to do. They have to try to embody it, and they will prove that it exists. Sometimes you have to be the love that you want there to be in the world. If it isn't you, it isn't there. It has to be you. And so all 3 of us are people that, for various reasons, have wandered into that vocation in different ways. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And I love, Chris, that you said that I was healing souls, because to a certain extent, that's a truer statement than you might even realize. Because I have found that things that start out to be clinical are often very spiritual. That all of us, in some way or another, are on some kind of redemption story arc in this world, trying to make meaning out of the world, make sense out of it, you know, learn how to love and be loved in preparation for something else, it seems, that we don't quite know what it is. And you know, I think that's really what it boils down to. It is a very spiritual process. It really is. And I always think of in the back of my mind, I always think about when I was in seminary. I was very enamored of a saint called Saint John Bosco. It's very prominent in Catholicism. He was the founder of the Salesian order. And he used to have a saying, a motto in Latin, "Da mihi animas cetera tole," which means, "Give me souls and you keep all the rest." And that's always in the back of my head. that's essentially what I view in every encounter. When I encounter a person, no matter how hideous they may be, I think to myself, I am encountering this person's spirit at a very particular time and at a very particular level. What could I do for it? What can I do? Because in the final analysis, that's more important than a lot of this stuff. See? And I think that's very important. Now, Josh, I know we have a lot of other calls, but I do want to say that, you know, Marie, I think her name was, right? Marie?
Yes.
Marie inspired a very beautiful conversation that I think has brought some healing into the room for some people and laid us all bare, laid all our souls bare. And I think that's a testament to who she is. Now, who else do we have to talk to?
Yeah, we have let's see here. Yeah, Deborah. Deborah, you're muted, but go ahead, Deborah. Where are you calling from?
Hey guys, I'm calling from Dallas, Fort Worth.
Hello. What's your name?
How about those Cowboys?
Oh yeah, don't go there.
Please don't. What's your name?
Yeah. Listen, I have
Deborah.
kind of
Deborah.
an odd, not deep question like the last one.
That's okay. They don't all have to be deep.
So, I was fairly young when the O.J. Simpson case happened, and in many ways, it was the first true crime story of my lifetime that I really remember.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been really interested in it, and have kept, you know, if I see or read anything on it, I do. So years later, when the Aaron Hernandez case happened,
oh boy,
it really grabbed my attention because of the CTE.
Grabbed everybody's attention.
Yes. And basically, I'm just kind of wanting some clarification on CTE. If that alone can make a person do horrific things, or if there has to be some underlying mental illness that goes with it. Because in Aaron's situation, it just was so extreme.
Well, also, and I'll just say this, like kind of the preamble, O.J. Simpson was a terrible person his entire life.
Yeah, he was.
Like from childhood. I mean, he was now I'm not saying that you know, the hits to the head didn't affect him, and especially during the 70s. My favorite team, the Pittsburgh Steelers, dealt with a lot of people that killed themselves because they were suffering from, you know, what was determined to be CTE later on, but you know, they didn't really have a diagnosis for it yet. And not all of them were violent towards other people, but to themselves, they almost just couldn't live in their own skin anymore. Chris, this is right up your alley because I know you know Junior Seau, one of my favorite football players, who donated his brain to science because he was a linebacker in the NFL for about 15, 16 years, and he was a violent football player, but a sweetheart of a man, one of the sweetest. Shot himself in the chest so he didn't bother his brain so it could be studied. You know, so yes, CTE is a terrible thing, and I know Aaron Hernandez was found to have that as well.
Stage 3 chronic traumatic encephalopathy.
Right, and he was like only 27.
Yeah, the experts said that one expert said that it was the worst case they had, the most extensive case they had seen in somebody that age. And chronic traumatic encephalopathy is associated with difficulty with impulse control, with anger, personality changes, all of that. But I have to tell you, and I want to let Chris jump in because I think Josh set the stage for some interesting comments. But I will just say loosely that my experience has been there are some people who can experience very severe changes, you know, related to these kinds of medical issues. I mean, you know, that's a medical doctor kind of chat. But I have certainly seen that in the world of psychology and in forensics. But it's hard to say that it's 100% the cause. It can sort of loosen the grip a little bit on a person. But my experience has also been that you know, it's sort of like sometimes it takes something to bring out what you're inhibiting, but you need the thing underneath too, right? So like if you drink and you become a horrible person, chances are that you're inhibiting that you're already kind of horrible, and then the alcohol takes the gating away, and out it comes, you know, that kind of thing. You need something to take away the inhibition, but you can't say, if it weren't for the alcohol, I would never be a terrible person, you know, that kind of thing. And so I think this is, you know, you get some people who are kind of hotheads and aggressive or nasty as it is, and then you take away the inhibition, and then you can see this kind of stuff. And then there are other cases where, honest to God, like person has no history like that, like the Phineas Gage story, you know, the famous story of the guy who the tamping iron went through the front of his brain and his whole personality changed, right? And there are people like that too. So it's like somewhere between the disinhibiting of what you really are underneath versus complete personality change. You can see that. And there are a lot of really interesting cases that raise those questions. I mean, you know, Charles Whitman, the tower shooter. You remember the Marine that went up in the tower, stabbed someone, and then was picking people off at the university in Texas, you know, your home state there. Yes. Well, you know, my understanding is they think he had a brain tumor. See, so those things are very interesting. Now, Chris, do you have any thoughts about the football player that Josh is talking about? That is, you know, my one Jeopardy category that I know nothing about. So I turn to you. What is?
I'm sorry.
Know anything about for 500, Alex?
Great questions for 500, right?
Yes, great questions for 500. In the form of a question.
Well, you know, at the time, right, we all watched the Bronco chase, but then when you start doing the correlation to what was going on at that moment, I mean, there was our culture was also going through a paradigm shift, where, you know, he was. Don't forget that he had just finished filming a pilot, a movie pilot about becoming a Navy SEAL, frogman.
Right.
And that he also was going through, you know, the dynamics of the divorce, et cetera. And, you know, Ron Goldman just happened to find himself in the wrong place at the wrong time, returning, you know, Nicole's property. And, you know, what made him break? I don't know. Could it have been, you know, his brain? I mean, that's obviously a possibility. Could it have been, you know, a contributing factor? Probably. But I know that, you know, Junior Seau, number 55 from the Chargers, gotta love him.
Love him.
That guy was a very amazing human being. And he chose, though, to kill himself. He didn't kill other people.
Right.
And I think that's the difference. They both probably had traumatic brain injury of some sort, but they chose different ways of handling it. Now, whether that's a chemical imbalance, that's out of my pay grade. To be honest with you, I can't answer anything, you know, to give you probably a logical answer to that. But do I think it could be a contributing factor? I do believe, yes, it could be a contributing factor. But then again, then we have to say, okay, well, let's take a look at all of our veterans who have TBI, brain injuries from concussions, and all the other stuff that they've experienced. There's a high volume of those guys and gals who take their own life. And that's, you know, maybe that's another area that could be researched, you know, to your point, that I wonder what the statistics are in the veteran hospitals, you know, for those who are, you know, hurting themselves, kind of like, you know, Junior, you know, he shot himself right there on the Strand, just off of Pacific Street in our city. In fact, my old partner was one of the guys that was there investigating it. So I think it's a great idea that you've presented here. What's your feeling overall?
Well, I mean, the OJ case was, I mean, to me, it's classic, just spousal abuse case.
Yeah.
Possession, control. But I've often wondered, once we learned more about CTE from the Hernandez case, that's
Right.
when I made me go back and just wonder, the time he played, they didn't have the protection to the level we have now. And I've just wondered, and I had hoped, but kind of knew that his family wouldn't, do the testing afterwards, but they didn't. And that's not surprising, but it does make me wonder, what all has been overlooked over the years when CTE could have played a huge part in various deaths over the years.
It's a fascinating thought, and what a great call, and thanks for sharing. Seriously.
Well, thank you guys.
Thanks,
all right,
Deborah.
have a good day.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We just have to resist
Aloha.
the temptation. It's important to resist the temptation to not reduce everything only to damage to the brain without understanding that it's more complicated.
Well, they slapped my mother when I was born. You know that. I've told you that for years. When I was born, they slapped my mother, and then they rolled me over, looked at my bottom, and told her she had twins, and that was Josh. Josh just lost the milkshake that he was drinking. You guys don't believe me, but that's a true statement. They looked at my butt and said, "Ma'am, Miss McDonough, you have twins."
Yeah, your face looks like your butt.
That's a visual.
Josh gets it.
That should scare you.
That caught me off guard.
I can't. All right. Is there anybody else?
All right. Well,
Hopefully on a completely different note.
Allison, go.
Thank you.
Thank you for calling. Where are you calling from?
Hello.
Hello.
I'm calling from Melbourne, Australia.
Oh, very good.
Have you ever called before?
No.
Oh, okay. Nice to meet you.
You too.
Top of the morning.
Yeah. Let me apologize in advance if my dogs bark, because they've got a habit of doing that if I'm on the phone.
No worries.
I just wanted to know from Dr. Gary, if I described a crime, would you be able to give me an idea of what drives the perpetrators of that sort of crime?
A publicly known crime or a crime?
No.
I mean, I think it's probably not a good idea for me to comment in a vacuum.
I'll give it a shot.
We can, you can say what you're going to say, and we'll sort of decide.
Yeah, I'm open for advice. Yeah, shoot.
So why don't you tell the story that you have in mind, and we'll
hit us.
Yeah.
Give us the kangaroo. Boom.
All right. Well, this happened to me. I'm not going to pretend that it was someone else. When I was about 16, I went to a party and had my drink spiked and was sexually assaulted by about, and I don't remember how many, 5 to 7 men. And I don't remember a lot of it, but the next morning I woke up and they had shaved one of my eyebrows off. They had cut chunks out of my hair, and they had spread rumours around, I guess, around the school, at the suburb that we lived in, that it was something that I instigated and that I was, a willing participant in all of this.
Classic victim shaming and lying. Yeah.
Oh, they preempted it before I even had a chance to really tell anyone.
Of course.
But I find it really hard to find information on people who do this sort of thing, and I just wonder how that works, how that dynamic works, where you can have like that many people want to be involved in such a thing. Because if I can't imagine being in a room of people and any of my friends suggesting something like that and going along with it. So I don't, yeah. Anyway, I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
You mean the dynamic in which some kind of horrendous person is doing something and then a mob sort of gets caught up in it and is capable of doing horrible things also? That kind of thing?
So from my point of view, I don't remember how it all started, but I do think it was planned from the start to have me there. I was the only female there. I didn't know that was going to be the case.
Yeah.
And, they had to have whatever they spike my drink with ready. I don't know if there was one sort of instigator or whether they all came up with it together. It's,
This is a deeply disturbing story on a lot of levels. And, at the risk of sounding trite, I do want to, of course, extend from all of us, our heartfelt authenticity about what it is that you experienced. Like with the previous caller, extend a kind of a safe space feeling and a feeling of validation and appreciation that you're sharing this, honestly, from the heart, really. Now, the problem with this is there are a few different answers with regard to how mobs can do terror. I mean, you could ask the same question about the people in the Third Reich, for example, who slaughtered, fellow human beings. Now, on the one hand, I think sometimes in a mob situation, what happens is that an authoritative person gives you a permission structure to let out the most animal parts of yourself, right? So if, for example, you were living in some, let's say, made up country, right? I don't know, and in this made up country, you had a leader that told you it was perfectly okay to walk up to people and bop them in the face if they did something to you that you considered unjust. You might, in the face of whatever religious and philosophical ideas that you have, be relieved that you suddenly are allowed to disinhibit what would normally put the kibosh on that. And you would see a spike in people going around bopping people in the face because they've been given permission to do it by a person who doesn't have any inhibition themselves. There is that. Sometimes that's why we pick such people, because they mirror us and we like that. They give us that permission. Then there is the other type of situation where you have this ancient animal, low brain kind of need to belong. And what can sometimes happen is that if a person is telling you to do something and you don't feel that it's the right thing to do, you'll kind of go along with it anyway, because you want to be liked, you want to be part of the group, you don't want to look like you're not strong, you're not virile, whatever. And you can get egged on, or you can become afraid and you can get sucked into it. Now, I have to tell you, my entire personality is against the notion of anything that involves doing what a crowd of people do. I have no interest in it. I have no interest in doing what a group of people does, a team does, an audience does, two people standing together do. It doesn't interest me at all. It bores me. But I think that it is unusual. Most people want very much to be loved by the group. And that need can get very perverted into doing things that are terrible. Very terrible. It is very hard to stand alone. Very, very hard to stand alone. Just today, I had an experience of watching a bunch of people ridiculing somebody. And I was the person who said, I really don't think any of you are in a place to be mocking anybody,
right?
Be attacking this person. And I was attacked for defending the person, but I didn't care, because it was very hard for me to watch this person standing alone and so I wasn't going to allow it. See, but I think that a lot of people would get sucked into it because they don't want to look weak. So it's a kind of a mixture of the permission structure to let out these hideous animal instincts and whatever, and this kind of this idea of not wanting to look like, you know, you're not doing what the crowd is doing. Now, I wish that in the story you told, somebody would have said, "What the hell are you doing?" You know, and torn these people off of you.
Right.
Yeah.
But you understand it that would take a lot for
Chris.
a person to do, and sometimes they're afraid that they're going to get attacked. So I just want to say that because I want people in the audience, if you are ever in a situation where you're looking at an injustice, you know, it is easier in fantasy than in real life to actually stand up to it. All of us want to believe that we would be the one who would do something, but it is actually very rare. It's actually very rare.
Dr.
I
Gary,
think
That's what I would say.
it's interesting you say that because I am that person. I was always
I knew it. I could have
absolutely.
Yes.
well, that, and also probably because, you know, your situations in life have molded you that way as well. Like, not that you wouldn't be that person, but it's so much more pronounced in you. And Chris, you've been on calls before where it's like, well, this person did this, and how much involved were you, or, you know, how much were you involved in? And I think a lot of times, a lot of people will use that mob mentality as justification to do awful things because other people are doing that as well. Now, it takes a really, really sick group of people to, you know, come to the conclusion that, yeah, this is what we're doing, you know, roofing somebody. I mean, that is, that's so much more extreme than kind of bullying and picking on somebody. But it falls under the same category, is that, like, when people, you know, see that somebody's being attacked, you join the pack. You know, it's like a pack of lions on a wounded gazelle. You know, it's an easy target, and everybody else is doing it, so it must not be that big of a deal. Obviously, in this case, when what happened to you and has happened to many people, it's unfathomable. But Chris, you know, you have shown up to scenes before where everybody's like, well, this person did this, and everybody gets sort of treated the same, right?
Yeah, let's always remember the type of offender here is what we would call a power assurance rapist.
Mm.
And this individual,
That's a good point, Chris.
First of all, every one of these guys, and I'm so sorry to hear this story, that and this violence that has taken place in your life. The idea that we need to remember, first of all, is they used some type of drug to incapacitate this young lady here. And so that in of itself is a decision made by an individual, and then it is enforced collectively by a group. And each one of those individuals made a choice to violate you violently. So no excuses for any one of them.
Yeah, each one is responsible as the next
Individual
for their own actions.
Right.
Right. So now we have to step back and say, what type of group does this?
Right. I was only following orders. You know,
Right. Right.
Heard that in Nuremberg a couple times, huh?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And I'm curious, do you think one of your drinks, or what, can you give me some context as to how you think the drugs were applied to you?
Yeah, it was in a drink.
Okay, were you in a bar? May I ask you that?
No, we were at a party. I was led to believe it was going to be a party.
Okay.
And when I got there, it was only the guys that were there.
Okay. And was the connection through social media, through your girlfriends?
No, this was 35. I'm 50 now. It was 35 years ago, 34 years ago.
Okay.
I'm glad there wasn't social media because there'd be photos and video and all sorts of things. So,
okay. And was it a guy who invited you?
Yeah, he was supposed to be my boyfriend.
Oh, okay. Well, suspect number one, right?
Yeah, it was him. Yeah, he was the ringleader.
Yeah. And so that mentality then became dominance and control. And every one of them exhibited the exact same type of personality type as what we would, their insecurity. They use sexual assault to assert that dominance and control over their own insecurities. And so it's their, and by the way, they've done it again. I will assure you of that. And how help me understand how you've been coping with this through this 30 years. And I'm so sorry.
I've had of therapy.
Okay.
And I really didn't cope very well because I didn't report it to the police at the start. And I have when I was 9, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and I had that sort of period after this happened of not looking after myself and not, going out drinking and doing all sorts of things. And I ended up really damaging my health. So, can't have kids because I damaged my kidney so much I sort of took it out on myself, if that makes sense. But
yes.
after a while, I, ended up getting therapy, and I've seen quite a few psychologists and stuff. And I think I was in denial for a really long time, but that acceptance was a major milestone in sort of overcoming it. Like you do the if onlys. If only I had have not gone that night, if only I'd turned around when this happened. But I just had to accept that I didn't, and it happened. And, that's where we are. And I think that Marie was talking about earlier about forgiveness, and I don't forgive them. I'm not going to forgive them. But that's not part of what I want to do. But I think it has affected me long term in that I'm very not good at relationships with men. I've been single for a really long time because I just don't trust them. So,
and rightfully so, right? Men are broken.
yeah.
Right? I mean, let's admit it. I used to tell my daughter all the time, men are like buses. Look at the destination as it's coming towards you. When the door opens, look at the driver. You may or may not want to get in there, but before you get on that bus, lift up the baggage compartment, see what's in there.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to fix it. And
No.
right?
No.
But the amazing thing about you, your call here, is the empowerment that you have. You have, and I'm really, it's, you inspire me by just listening to the fact that you've taken control over your, the situation. And because those guys, believe it or not, are still hoping that the damage that they have caused is still malingering. And you've not let them have that control, or, and they had to use narcotics to take it away from you. So don't give up, just there's an old saying, no woman got to the top of the mountain by falling there.
True.
Yeah. And, I'm really proud of you personally. I think you're doing a great, I don't know you. I've never met you, but just listening to you, I think you're on the right track. And if you ever see those guys, give us a call. I'll hunt them down for you.
It's, what, I haven't even Googled them. I know their names, and I haven't done that. I don't really want to know what they're up to or what's happened to them. But I'm interested in like the humiliation side of it as well. The like cutting my hair, chunks out of my hair, and like shaving brow and
It's just that next level evil type, you know. It's so beyond.
It's deeply disturbing. But I will tell you, Allison, that I've spent a lot of time talking to men, you know, as a clinician and privately. And I'll tell you a dirty little secret about men is that underneath all the machismo and the stupid crap that society tells them they have to do toxically to be men, a lot of them are very profoundly lonely and really just want someone to pay attention to them and care about them and love them. They just don't know how to do that or say it because the world teaches them that being sensitive is weak.
Yeah.
But a lot of them sit up in bed at night staring at the ceiling saying, I wish someone would come and care about my day and ask me how I am. And you know, and the truth is you're such a kind soul, such a kind person, such a soft-spoken and deep person that the truth is I wish with every fiber of myself that one of these gentle men that are out there who are looking for somebody like you would find you, because I think that they'd be very happy to. But you've been burned by the bad ones.
Yeah.
And
I think I'd be a good partner, but
there are some men
I don't think they get through the wall.
Say that again?
I think I'd be a good partner. I just don't think that they would. They'd have to land directly in my living room for that to happen.
That's what we were talking about earlier. Is that some of the offenses they take away your whole life.
They kill part of your soul.
Yeah, you've been afraid for years and years and years and years and years and years, and even though it happened a long time ago, it feels like it's happening now. And you know, that's what I'm saying. And it's sad to listen to how you've kind of given up on the idea that there could be people who aren't going to be like that. But there are. Believe it or not, there are.
Well, I don't think they're on dating websites or apps.
I mean, they should be in prison.
I mean, let's be honest. In your particular story, there are many hideous elements, but one of the most disturbing is that, as I understood you, the person that you were in an intimate relationship with was involved in it.
Yeah.
And so who can blame you for that? I understand that. But I'm telling you, I know that there are people out there who are lonely and that are kind and would never hurt a hair on a person's head. And a lot of those people are by themselves. And a lot of times it's because they've been hurt too. And you don't know they're out there. I mean, unfortunately, the reality is you get more attention when you do a terrible thing. Just like you could have millions of moments of life, and the one you'll remember is the one time something horrible happened. And you won't remember the millions when something didn't. We have a bias like that.
Yeah. And
you have to try, like, simple example. If you were walking down the street and, I don't know, a woman's child ran away from her and ran into the street, and you ran into the street and grabbed the kid, you know, yeah, you'd be on the front page of the paper for heroism. But think of a smaller act of heroism. Let's say someone's walking down the street and drops $100 bill, and you run after them, give them the $100 bill instead of pocketing it. You're not getting on the front page of the paper. But if you beat the crap out of the person with a baseball bat and took the $100, you'd be on the front page. And so we get the false impression that the world basically just consists of terrible people and people who do these outrageous, rare, giant, heroic things. But the truth is that most people are sort of in the shadow zone between. We all do stupid little awful things, and we all often are amazingly, shockingly larger than ourselves every once in a while. But you have to remember, like, you can't win the lotto if you stop buying tickets. It's not possible to meet the good person if you're not going out trying anymore. And I have to say, you're such a special person that it's sort of sad to see you sitting on the shelf. I hope you'll consider the possibility that if you were to call us up in a couple of months and say, I met someone and we've gotten together, I'd say, I'm happy for him or happy for her or whatever your particular orientation is. I'm happy for them. See, because they'd be lucky to have met you.
Well,
And,
I do have 2 dogs to keep me company.
oh, well, there you go. That's beautiful. What breed are they?
They are cardigan corgis.
Oh, now that's another side. I wish we had a picture.
They're very fancy.
They are cute as can be. Chris, you know that breed?
What's the breed?
Cardigan corgi.
Google it, and you'll understand what I mean. They're really cute.
Yeah, you broke up when you said it. I'm sorry. Say it again.
Cardigan corgi.
Yeah,
Gary, every time she talks, you say something. Like,
You say, Gary.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
no, you're okay. What is it?
Cardigan corgi.
Oh, cardigan corgis. Okay, I know corgis. Okay.
I don't know what a cardigan corgi is.
Yeah, they're different to the Pembrokes. The Queen had Pembrokes.
Yep.
These are a little bit bigger,
They're
and they come in different colors.
Do you want 2 more dogs?
Yep.
Good
I
for you.
think they're Welsh, aren't they?
Yeah,
Welsh?
they are.
Yeah,
They are. Yeah.
they are super cute
They're smart.
They are.
and adorable.
Why a cardigan? Like a sweater?
Yeah.
Like they make sweaters out of their fur?
I think it's a place in Wales.
Cardigan?
I think so.
Every time I think of a cardigan, I think of George Costanza from Seinfeld. I don't know why.
Do you have any Jack Russells near you up there?
My uncle's got Jack Russells.
Oh, do tell.
Yeah, he works for the RSPCA here. He does plumbing work for them. And every time a stray Jack Russell comes in, he will take it home.
Awesome. In Australia, you guys have all kinds of snakes. How do Jacks do around those snakes?
They do get themselves into trouble. They are full on.
Oh, I had one. My grandpa. I inherited one after my grandpa died, and his name was Jack. Go figure. And he only liked my grandpa. So when my grandpa died, I was stuck with this thing, and I mean, I would wake up sometimes, and he would be pointing at me, going, and I go, "What the fuck is going on here?" Like he was crazy.
I took Buddy to CrimeCon, and we're in the lobby, and I lost sight of him just for a second on the leash. I turned around, and he's peeing on their couch, checking his email, checking his text messages. I looked over, and I'm like, well, that's going to leave a mark. It's like, here we go. Welcome to the Gaylord Hotel and one Jack Russell Terrier. Forget it. Oh, and then he looks at me like, what are you looking at? And I'm like, what, dude, you just peed on probably a $500 couch in the lobby at the Gaylord Hotel at CrimeCon. What do you think I'm looking at?
Yeah, he did that. Of course he did.
And then he wanted a treat.
Chris, and you gave him one, obviously. But
I was like, good boy. Now I got to clean it up.
I remember calling you one day, and you picked up, and I said, "Hey, what are you doing?" You said, "Well, I'll do it like that. I just got Budzo out from under the couch or under a bed because he was mad about something. Took a dump in the shower, and I had to get him out of the bed with a piece of cheese."
That dog, those guys, as you know, in Australia, those dogs are nuts. I mean, he went under a shed one time, and I think maybe that was the problem. And he went after a possum, and though they were under the doggone shed, hiding.
Yeah, my uncle still kills the possums.
Yeah, well, there you go. Right? Tell us about that.
Well, my uncle just finds the dead ones in his backyard that the dogs had overnight. But our possums are big. They're not like they're not tiny. They're quite feisty as well. So, like everything over here, they're a little bit feral. And the dogs just, he finds them in various stages of death.
Oh my!
He's like the facilitator.
The what?
He's like a facilitator of death.
Yeah, he just keeps feeding them.
He finds them and makes sure that they find their way peacefully to the other side.
Yeah.
That phrase that you used really brought the conversation full circle when you said a little bit feral. Because it brings us right back to the point about the animal side of people. And that, you know, it really brings everything around back to the original point of the conversation. And I, you know, I think we have other people that are holding. So, but I do want to say what a beautiful thing it is that you called, and that story was extraordinary. I mean, it'll haunt me for a long time, as will the story we heard earlier. But don't give up completely. You know, you never know what's going to come out of the sky. When you have a chance, sit down and read Sylvia Plath's poem Black Rook in Rainy Weather, about the way that something would just sort of pop up out of nowhere and shock you, and in a good way. And I recommend that poem too. Maybe you'll enjoy it. Okay.
Thank you, Allison. And make sure to watch Fiddler on the Roof when you get a chance to. Thank you so much.
Yes, but remember, Black Rook in Rainy Weather. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Now, Josh, who else is on the line?
Let's go ahead and let's see. We have
what a story, a powerful story that was.
It's crazy.
Glorendel.
Oh,
the things people endure are amazing to me. Yeah, what's your name, please?
Oh, Glorendel. I was watching a court hearing a little bit before Josh came on, which was a new case I haven't heard anything about. It took place on the 23rd of August in Ohio, and an Amish mother drowned her son.
I just heard about this.
4 years old. And she said she was giving him back to God. And she drove the golf cart into the lake with her two twin 18-year-old sons and 15-year-old daughter. They were able to swim to shore on their own, and the father was missing, and the mother said, oh, he went fishing, and he left his clothes in the boat, and he got swallowed by a fish, and you need to drag the lake and find the big fish that ate him. And I looked, and it turns out the father had drowned. They said it was some shared religious delusion, and he was trying to prove his act of faith, I guess.
Jonah-like story, being eaten by a fish and all that.
Yeah. And so there was a 10-minute body cam video of this all going down, and she was, exhorting the policeman to pray, and she had a couple other first responders, one of them down on the knees praying with her, and so forth. Now, a lot of people like to think Lori Daybell is crazy or legally insane. This woman seemed to be, she's soft-spoken and so forth. She pleaded today in court insanity. I feel a lot more sympathetic towards her than I ever do about Lori. And do you think Lori was really legally insane or not? Not that it matters in Idaho, because it wasn't a valid defense, but with all the stuff they did to cover up the case, it seems to me that it goes against the Monotone rule.
Dr. Gary, what's the definition of insanity?
Well, legally speaking, all that matters is the ability to tell the difference between right and wrong.
Then she's not insane.
Mm-hmm.
From a legal standpoint.
It's complicated, because if you have a religious belief that you really believe that God is telling you to do something.
Yeah.
And your choice is slanted because you think you're obeying a higher power. In other
But you
words,
wouldn't try and cover it up.
let them sort that out. I'm not going to comment on this particular case, but that when you do those kinds of assessments, the idea is, did you have in the free will and the kind of insight to know this is right, this is wrong, and I'm making a choice, to do the thing that is wrong on purpose.
Right.
And these stories, they're very tragic because when there really is psychosis, I have certainly seen cases like that. I mean, the things that people can do, are just horrendous. Voices told me to kill my children, set the house on fire and kill everybody, drown the children, whatever. And then sometimes you get people who pretend that they have psychotic ideas, but there were other motives. So you let that get sorted out. But this certainly, the story is pretty out there. I mean, look, I'm not going to comment on this particular case, but I will say that when people fake psychosis, it's often pretty lousy job of faking it. Like, they don't fake it well. You understand? They don't really, because when I've spent so much time working with people in the psychosis spectrum, because it was my specialty for many, many years. And I was the assistant director of the early psychosis clinic at Columbia Medical Center for years and years, and contributed a lot to the literature on how psychosis develops and so forth. And I know a thing or two about the flavor of it. And when people fake it, it's often, they're wrong. They don't get how it looks, right? So, I had a vision of the devil handing me a knife, and he told me to, visual hallucinations are extremely rare in psychotic disorders, right? Extremely rare outside of drug-induced brain damage, people that are malingering, seizures, whatever. Usually it's going to be auditory. So there are things like that. And, so in this story, I have to say, I want to wait till the facts come out. But I mean, the story has a weirdness to it. Simple example. I mean, how big of a fish are we talking about that can eat a human? It has a bizarreness. Now, I understand that somebody might have read the Old Testament and been reading about Jonah and being in the belly of the fish, which you see in some translations. But, it's a weird, it's weird. And so, I was saying, but Chris, go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, I want to know if the golf cart was pulled by horses.
I think that she must have stolen the Rangers golf cart and get around the site. They had a camper. They seem to be Amish light, if you ask me, because
Amish light. I love it.
She had a cell phone, and she had dress just below her knees as opposed to the ground. And
well, if churning your own butter makes you Amish, give me a hat.
Okay. Well, all right, I'm done. But the thing is, that is a very difficult life. That is a very difficult life. They have the Rumspringa where you get a taste of life outside, and then you have to choose if you want to stay Amish. That fascinates me, the idea of the Rumspringa. And I love the whole idea of it, but it must be extraordinarily difficult. And then you have the close breeding thing that can keep certain mental illnesses in the family when, and so all that stuff is fascinating. I'll tell you once, years ago, I was telling somebody the vocabulary word bon vivant, a person who lives a good life and enjoys life or whatever. And they said, what does that mean? And I explained it. And they said, use it in a sentence. So I did. And then they said, what's the opposite of a bon vivant? And I couldn't think of an answer. So I said a Mennonite. And I think that kind of is the opposite of a bon vivant. That is a very interesting faith.
Josh, you're English, aren't you?
No, I'm not, but I have churned butter before. So I'm an honorary.
And that hat. I mean, what a
and I'm not a huge fan of electricity all the time.
Well, it's dark behind you. You better light the candles.
I have, we have these kerosene, these kerosene lamps from 1941. When the power went out, the last time, I think kerosene goes bad, but everybody's telling me, no, it doesn't. It was disgusting. So, but
wait a minute. Lean back. Let me see your beard. Oh yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
You definitely have a little Amish thing going on.
His real name is Jedediah.
No, it's
We
not.
just call him Josh.
It's a fascinating culture, though. It really is.
It is. Love him.
And I love the barn building and the community and all of that. I just think it's fascinating.
They're great people. They give.
They're wonderful people.
You know, Josh is like, I'm trying to think of one
No,
way.
maybe I am. Maybe I am Amish. I don't know. I got to look into this.
Maybe I am Amish.
I don't know.
I have to look into this. Okay.
You might have convinced me.
Otis
Between the
is
electricity, the churning of the butter, the kerosene lamps, and the beard. I mean, I'm
It
a suspected
I'm telling
Amish.
See, we're duh.
I churn butter once or twice, living in the Amish paradise.
You don't have the pacifism of an Amish person.
You don't know that.
Come on. You argue with 5 men a night. Now, moving along.
All right.
But do we have another call?
Yes, we do. And thank you for that call. I appreciate it.
Thank you. That was an interesting little moment there, and suddenly feel like putting on suspenders and one of those straw hats. You know.
Hey.
Fascinating.
Don't you dare. The wee little child, Dr. Gary. I'll run you over with my horse and buggy if you don't quieten down.
You mean your golf cart with horses?
Linda Howard, go ahead. You're on.
Hi. I've talked to you and Dr. Gary a couple times, Josh. I'm from Surprise, Arizona.
Surprise.
And Chris, I just finished watching you in the interview room.
Well,
Watch
thank
you all
you.
the time. And I wanted to discuss about Allison, and I think it was Maria who talked about feeling they needed to see if they really needed to forgive their abusers. And I'm a Christian, and I do follow Bible principles, and forgiveness isn't required as far as what I've learned in every case. If a person is not sorry for what they've done, you don't have to forgive them. And Josh, and I wanted to ask you about, because I know your father killed your mom. Is he sorry about what he did?
I'm sure that whatever he considers sorry, but you know, I don't know. I mean, he says he is, but yeah, maybe he is. I don't know. I mean, I don't know, to be honest with you. I think that there is some sort of guilt or some sort of, but it was never seemed to be, to me, enough to really believe it or take it serious, you know, or at least from my standpoint. I'm sure that he is on some level. I mean, but I don't know. I really couldn't tell you.
Well, in the end, is the judgment. God's going to judge all people anyway. But I just feel like unless someone is really sorry for what they've done, there's no need to forgive them. And rather than carry that burden on yourself, feeling like you have to, otherwise you're going to be angry inside all your life. And I don't think that's true. I mean, I had a mother who emotionally abandoned me and my two brothers and gave us up because she loved her boyfriend more than she did us. Yeah. And she never ever said she was sorry. And she and I, even though we saw each other occasionally, because I ended up living with an aunt and uncle, and my two brothers ended up living with separate aunts and uncles. But she had the ability to keep us. Her brothers were going to get together. They put her in a house with us kids. They're going to help her get a job. And it lasted 2 weeks and she left. So I don't feel like in order to, I have to forgive her for what she did. I think it was intentional, and she never asked for forgiveness. She never told me she was sorry. So I never felt I had to have a relationship with her. Sorry, my mouth is dry. Or forgive her. So I think sometimes forgiveness can be overrated. And so so that's just my take on it. I don't think you should go around carrying all this guilt on your shoulders because you feel like you have to forgive someone.
Well, you know, this is very complicated because you mentioned that you happen to be Christian. And, you know, it's really tricky because, and I'm only saying this because you happen to identify that way, that the reality is that what Christ was saying is not a command to like your neighbor as yourself, but to love them. And that has nothing to do with liking them. Not at all. As a matter of fact, treating a person who is awful like you like them is a very great sacrifice and a glorification of God, because the reality is that they don't do anything to deserve it at all. You remember Christ said, if you love only those who love you, what reward do you deserve in the kingdom of heaven? So the idea is to treat people as if you love them, even though you don't feel it. That's what it is. Otherwise, what you have is justice. If you give to someone and they give back equally, that's justice. Love is, you don't give me anything, but I'm still going to give you as if you give to me.
It's
and
funny.
That's very, very hard. That's very hard. And you don't have to be perfect at it. You just have to strive toward it. But it's hard. It's hard. And I think the good Lord understands how difficult it is. I mean, you're talking about an example being set for us, that someone who was literally nailed, probably through the wrists to wood, and tortured, probably naked, although we depict him wearing something, probably being smeared with things by people who were watching and abused in every way. Ask God to forgive them.
Yes.
Now, that has always fascinated me, but if that's the example, he didn't say, you know, God, I like all these people.
He said, God forgive them, for they know not what they do. And sometimes I think what you said about mental illness, that could be complicated, because when someone does something,
they have to know what they're doing.
Is it mental illness, or is it just they're a bad person or
sometimes
evil person?
We can make excuses for people too. All I'm saying is that I don't think you have to be perfect, because all of us have faults. I'm just saying it's a beautiful thing to sort of strive toward. So, like, for example, I don't know anyone, even the holiest people, don't have a few people that they think are horrible. It's not possible. It just isn't possible. But you strive toward being a little bit more perfected every day by just saying, like, this person, you know, my neighbor is being really freaking annoying. They were terrible to me. I'm going to go out of my way to try to not be terrible back. But then sometimes somebody does something that's so bad that to be around them is not caring about yourself. Like, the person could actually do something that is dangerous to you. That's different. That's different. If a person is harming you, then to be away from them is a kind of self-love. And that's where it gets tricky, because at the same time that we have to try to self-perfect and forgive and all that, we also have to understand that there are some people in this world that are very dangerous. Remember, one of the most important things, and there were many, that Christ said was to be as wise as a serpent and as innocent as a dove. It's one thing to be kind and forgiving. It's another thing to be an idiot. You have to be both at the same time. You have to know what you're dealing with, and you have to be forgiving. That balance, like a fiddler on the roof, is a very difficult thing to maintain. But I think that there's nothing wrong with living a life where you're trying to, where it is possible, to not hate.
And I actually did that this weekend. This Saturday, I was watching my granddaughter, and her mother, my son's ex-wife, picked her up, and I can't stand her. She's not a nice person. But when she came in, I hugged her. I said, "Hi, it's nice to see you. How have you been?" And because I just felt like, you know, there's no point in holding a grudge or anything like that. And that I do think you have to, what you're saying, that you can love people and not like them, and not like them. You can love them, but not like them.
Yes, exactly. And if somebody is abusing you, you don't have to feel guilty about staying away from them. That's a little different, you know, because remember something. I always thought this was interesting, and a lot of people never notice this, but it's just one of those things I think about. Everybody, you know, you get caught up in the whole Christ talking about turning the other cheek, right?
Yes.
But remember when Christ was standing, I'm trying to remember, I think it was turn of Herod. I have to look if it was Pilate or Herod. And he was struck. He didn't just stand there and let someone strike him. He turned around and he said, and he pointed out that that it was unjust.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you strike me? So in other words, on the one hand, there is forgiveness. But on the other hand, there is pointing out injustice and standing up for yourself when you have to.
Right.
But you have to also remember the other part of the sentence is to love your neighbor as yourself.
Right.
So you don't put yourself in a situation where you get abused.
Mm-hmm.
Christ is not asking you to be a masochist.
Well, right. And
but at the same time, when somebody is not posing, a violent risk to you or something like that, and you're talking about some petty thing,
right.
then I think it's important to forgive and try to move on. It's a balance.
Right. And Christ actually had justified anger also, because when he turned over the tables of the money chambers in the temple and said they were turning into a den of thieves, he justifiably showed his anger at what they were doing. So I think, like you said, I wonder if sometimes my mother,
right?
Yeah, I wonder if my mother was mentally ill, because she, my father was an alcoholic and used to beat her terribly.
My kids used to say that to me all the time.
Yeah.
What did they say to you, Josh?
And back then you didn't have, back then you didn't have the support you do today. I remember when she put him in jail for the first time, the first thing he did when he got out was come and beat her back up. Today they have a lot, there's, you don't have to worry about that. But because of her being hit in the head so many times, and I wonder if she just lost her, that feeling of love for her children, and she became self-absorbed in what she wanted. And so I wonder if sometimes because of what she did, if it had to do with the way she was treated by father.
Well, I think that's going to look, that's something for you in your private time and your private thoughts, your private prayer to work out. And it's a powerful story, and one that I bet a lot of people, find resonates for them. But I think what you're exemplifying is a situation where forgiveness is one thing, but like danger is another.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I mean?
Right.
So you have to balance those two things. I mean, Chris, wouldn't you say that that's true? That Christ did not tell people that to put themselves in a situation where they're going to be abused.
Right.
Yeah, and remember that it's godly sorrow. It's not it's not for what we did. It's what we did to him. When we ask for forgiveness, it's because we offended God, not that we offended ourselves or our neighbors. And that's where the Savior would say, in sackcloth and ashes. We're all proud of our humility, but it was Christ himself on the cross who said, Father, why hast thou forsaken me? That's another level I don't think we understand yet. So the fact that, it's easy for all of us to, myself included, when I used to sit with murderers and, listen to them, they weren't talking to me. That was an opportunity for them to make try to fix it with the Lord. But even at that point, they can't bring back life. And that's part of the repentance process.
That brings up another question,
sure,
Chris, because a lot of people like Chris Watts, for example, that go to prison for what they've done, all of a sudden they become, they read the Bible and they start saying, they're born again Christian, or they've read the Bible, so they've changed. But I know a lot of people who go to prison for doing bad things do that. And I wonder how sincere that is, or if they're just trying to feel better that God will forgive them if they seek out, seek him out.
That's a great point, because, right, when we talk about restitution, that's part of the repentance process. Okay. And I think that's where, the Lord talks about, the 10, 5 wise and 5 foolish, where are you going to go get oil in your lamp at the 11th hour, 59th minute, when the bride is coming to the bridegroom? Where are you going to go? And that's why when they finally get to the wedding, the door is open. And it's the Savior himself standing at the door. And he says, I knew you not, for you draw close to me with your lips, but your hearts are far from me. You know, that in of itself is a life experience. That's how we all live. Sometimes we have oil, sometimes we don't. But what he tries to help us understand, and I'm still learning and growing, is if I've stolen something, in order for me to have forgiveness and feel that godly sorrow, i.e., I offended God, not I offended the store.
That's
Then,
true.
go
Good
ahead.
point. Yeah, that's true.
Yes. And when I go to
Exactly.
him and say, you know, I'm sorry, okay, do I feel it in my gut and my soul that I offended him?
Right.
If I don't, then I've not experienced godly sorrow.
And if you do, you won't do it again. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
well,
And go ahead.
no, I was going to say, I don't want to take up all your time. I know you've got probably callers, still in the queue. So, but I just wanted to say how I appreciate each one of you. Chris, I watch you all the time on the interview room. Like I said, I came straight from you to Josh. And Dr. Gary, I've talked to, I love all you guys. I think you're so kind and compassionate.
Thank you.
And so I appreciate that. And you, anytime I watch all of your shows, I feel more uplifted. So I appreciate it very much. Appreciate all of you guys.
Thank you for
Thank
your
you so much for calling.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Have a good evening. Bye.
Yeah, what beautiful calls we're getting tonight. You know, they're very different than calls we get sometimes, where they're sort of all over the place and difficult to follow. And these questions are like, each one of them is like a bomb, to the heart. It's a lot,
Well,
I mean, this feels like what I'm used to, what my day looks like, where it's like painful story after painful story and trying to almost minister to broken hearts, and it's a really interesting thing.
Yeah,
I just hope that I hope, Chris, taking your analogy, Christ's analogy, that I hope one day when he opens the door, he sees a little bit of himself in me. And, and that's what I think it's all about. I must decrease, but he must increase. And I think it's about that he has to see a little of himself in you to recognize you.
I had a fascinating conversation with Kathleen here says, I don't believe I was born into sin. And I had a fascinating conversation with a priest one time. His name was Father Brody. Yeah. And he was talking about my oldest son at the time, who I had not, there, I don't know where Gary went, but
just off camera.
Okay. Anyway, Kathleen, he said that my, Ian, my oldest son at the time, if I didn't baptize him, he was going to go into, purgatory and limbo and all this, stuff. And I was like, whoa, that's deep. That's heavy. And I asked him a question. I said, can I ask you a question? And he goes, yeah, sure. What's the question? And my question has always been, and I asked it to him that day, did Jesus die for the sins of the world, or did he leave Adam's transgression out?
I don't know. I don't know the answer.
It was a mic drop moment. He said, nobody's ever asked me that question. I said, well, I just did. You said that my son was born into sin through Adam's transgression. Did Jesus die for that, or did he leave that one out? And he goes, well, nobody's ever asked me that. And I said, okay, well, I just did. Answer the question. You're wanting me to baptize my son, so I want to know if it's for Adam's transgression or is it for my son's transgressions? Because I don't believe my son was born into the world in sin. How can a child sin? That was my question. Anyway, that was my quest to start into the world. And, here I am.
Well,
it was Eve. Baby kisses. It was Eve. Yeah.
Hey, Chris, the whole Amish thing.
Yeah. Golf carts.
I think I might have to embrace this at some point.
You know what, Josh? As a close friend, and you and I have been friends for what, 5 years now almost.
Yeah.
Okay. You've come to know me, I've come to know you.
Yes.
I didn't want to tell you this, but Josh, you are Amish.
Well, look, it's like we're on the Maury Povich show.
Yeah.
The lie detector determined you are Amish. And you know what, brother Chris, thou will be bucking some hay tomorrow somehow.
Uh-huh.
And readying the horses for travel.
As good Nunez says, we can get you a horse and buggy as soon as possible. Can you just see him with his outfit? I mean, and by the way, let's be honest here. The Amish people are amazing, wonderful.
Absolutely.
And this is 100% shtick and comedy, right? I mean, we're taking advantage of given the opportunity to, talk about Josh and his past and the things that he hasn't embraced yet, but he is embracing it. And I think we should all encourage him to embrace his inner Amish.
Yeah.
But he'll have to give up the podcast and be.
I want to see if he starts whittling.
He's going to have to give it all up, Josh, unless you run it by string and tin can.
Do you still have the man bun? Because that's not Amish.
I do not have a man bun anymore.
When did you cut the man bun? I forgot.
2 years ago, probably.
What did you do with it when you cut it off?
Thou was toldeth to cut it the man bun.
But when you removed it, was it a ball like a triple, like a triple in Star Trek?
No.
Did it run around? What
No,
was it
fell,
like?
It just fell onto the floor and swept up. And it felt a little like Simpson at first.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, but this whole Amish thing. I mean, I might embrace it. I've been paying attention to see what's going on with them, and they live a very unique life. But you're right. I would have to start a podcast with strings and cans. And
you become a preacher.
They plant corn.
I love corn.
Dogs.
You know what's fascinated me that I learned? I think I can't remember what state I was visiting when I learned this, but this amazed me. Did you know that the word corn really just means the most abundant crop? What we call corn is maize. But we use the word corn just means common. That's why when a joke is repeated a lot, you say it's corny. Because it literally just means the most common crop. Corn in one place doesn't have to be what we call maize.
Okay, well, I have a confession. And it deals with Josh.
Okay.
All right, everybody. So what happened.
Lord, here we go.
And one of the ways she started to embrace his inner self.
Mm.
So I was at a store one day and Josh comes walking in, and it's a country store in Amish country.
Oh boy.
Just outside of Ohio. And Josh comes in and says, "Hey, I just moved into the neighborhood and I want to raise certain things." And the good clerk says, "Well, what are you into?" And he goes, "Well, I'm not really sure. What do you think I should do?" And he goes, "Well, how about, chicken farming?" He goes, "Perfect. What do I need to do?" And he says, "Well, first you got to buy some chickens." And so Josh, what was it, like $1,000, right? When you kicked out
something like that, right?
1,000? Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, he drops $1,000, and it was the first time I met him, and then he takes off, and then about a week later, I'm in that same store, and Josh comes walking in. This time he wasn't happy. And he says to the clerk, he says, look, he says, I need another 1,000 chickens. The ones that you sold me are defective. And he looked over at me and I was like, well, I don't know what's going on with this guy, but I think we're going to be friends one day. And anyway, the guy was very apologetic, as the Amish are, and gives him another 1,000 chickens. I thought he was going to bring back, hundreds and hundreds of eggs and sell them to the co-op there, but that didn't exist.
No.
So about a week later, he comes back in and I'm in the store again by coincidence.
It just happened that way.
Yes. And he was really upset at that point because, he was like, I need another 1,000 chickens. And finally I looked at him and I said, dude, I've been in this store, 3 times now since you've come in and you've had 2,000 chickens at least, what in the heck is going on? And the only thing I could remember Josh saying was, how close are you supposed to plant these things?
Thank God we ran into each other.
Don't forget to tip your waitress.
Thank God.
We were all like chicken farmer. It's like,
and Brother Chris, now I know the yield that I must.
Brother Chris.
John,
this conversation is off the rails.
Well, the fact is, I'm so glad that we saw each other 3 times at the store that day, or that during that couple of weeks, because
I thought when you asked me about the box of Cheerios, if they were donut seeds, I didn't know what to say to you at that day. I figured, holy cow, what? This guy, he's a little Amish.
They used to call me Joshadiah.
What did they call you?
Joshadiah.
Of course they did.
I can't.
Of course.
There's somebody in the audience who keeps saying, could somebody please tell me what the show's about?
Donuts
just came into it. I don't understand what it's about. What is the
don't either. That's the best part.
Chickens. And he was asking, how close do you plant them?
Yeah, so the topic of tonight is
chicken farmer.
Chicken farmer, yes. Okay.
All right. Two more. We got 2 more calls.
Oh, dear Lord. Okay.
Yeah. Let's get through them. And I appreciate you guys waiting. And we got Christina. Christina, I hope I'm sorry for making you wait. Where are you calling from? Let me guess. Amish country.
Sherlock Ho, how close?
Hi.
Hi, Christina.
Aloha.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Hey.
I called in before. I'm Eat the Food Tina from Napoleon Dynamite.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. We love that name. Yeah.
Yes.
Last time we had a whole shtick about
Yes. Sleepless in Seattle.
I'm getting a llama too now.
Right. No, I just wanted to say, Dr. Gary, I'm a huge fan, and I'm just shocked that you have not been invited to CrimeCon, because I truly believe that you're the brightest mind in true crime.
there
currently
are a lot of bright people in true crime.
I know.
To say, but
no.
I've been invited to CrimeCon. It's just not this time, but I've been invited. I did a panel, and it was a lot of fun to do it. And I'm sure that when Chris and I have our book come out about the foundation, which I talked about earlier, Chris gave a gist of it. We'll probably wind up, attending or talking about. I can envision that. I'm not sure, but that's very sweet of you. But I'm just doing my job as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, well, and I also hope that at some point you get to interview Coburger. I love Catherine Ramsland, but I really think it needs to be someone like you who's a practicing clinical psychologist, and I think you could really shed some insight into what you do.
It might be inappropriate then for me to, you know what I'm saying? I mean, the point may be that it can't be. someone where there's a whiff of it being a clinical conversation. That's part of the issue. But I appreciate what you're saying. I mean, I have a lot of questions for him. I have suspected for a long time that one way or another, I'm probably going to at some point hear from him. Because I know that he was monitoring everything that people were sort of saying about him. And I think that he would have been very pleased with the idea that people who have any recognition in the field were talking about him. And because I think that was part of the fantasy, that people would be sitting around, including his case, in discussion of interesting crime and all that kind of thing. And so I think he knows who we are, knows of us. He was studying crime. He might have even read things I've written, or perhaps even read The New Evil. So I think that it's possible that he, somebody that was in those initial conversations on the interview room might hear from him, since he has that sort of access to email, as I understand it. Isn't that true, Chris? He could theoretically email someone, right?
Yep. Right today. He's got a pad.
Right. Well, and he's certainly intellectually bored and all of that. Now, I'm sure he's also aware that we've said publicly, because this is the kind of person who would monitor everything being said about him, that, we've sort of talked about how he isn't as bright as he thinks he is. He's sort of a social loser, a pervert, and all these other kinds of things. And those things are true. But as far as I'm concerned, he is like a specimen. He is of interest as a specimen. Right. And the irony is that that's how he felt about people, right? That they were basically just, amoeba in a petri dish to study and kind of lord it over. But the reality is that's what's interesting about him, is only to help understand other people who have this kind of problem, of personality and fantasy and so forth, and sort of try to stop it in the future. But otherwise, he's not interesting at all. And I think in that regard, I don't like the idea of adding to his sense of his self-importance by talking about him. But I think that we have a need to understand what happened there, and also to give closure that was not given by the legal process, because there was too much allowing him to not have to talk. And there are families that, even though they might not want the gruesome details, they really want to know what the heck happened to their loved one.
Right.
And, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Josh, do you remember when we showed the little video clip of the mother of Denise Naslund?
Yes.
Who died? I mean, I'm almost tempted to ask you to show it again for the audience members that haven't, because what she beautifully articulates is that for the rest of your life, you find yourself thinking, what did she go through? What was going through her mind? How much pain did she have? And it tormented that woman for her entire life until she died. And I think what it really drives home is the need for people to know what happened to their loved one. And I mean, Chris, you know how important it is to get that closure and how much it would matter, and I think that's part of the reason he doesn't talk.
Well,
my question for you, Dr. Gary, is along that same line. It's about what do we do for prevention and intervention? One of my all-time favorite movies is A Clockwork Orange.
Oh yes.
Did you know that
the author Anthony Burgess wrote the miniseries Jesus of Nazareth?
Oh no, I didn't know that.
I bet you didn't know that piece of trivia. Think about that.
Interesting.
Same mind produced A Clockwork Orange.
Well, yeah. Well, it's but it's interesting. Even though it's deeply disturbing. I've only been able to sit through it twice, but I learned something new. But it's all about these psychological treatments that this antisocial psychopath goes through, and how ineffective they all are. And then in the end, I don't know, I encourage anybody who's listening to watch that movie if you're interested in psychology. But I guess what I'm curious about is being from the Seattle area, I've got Bundy, Ridgeway, and now Coburger, these serial and mass murderers in my neighborhood. But there's always, I'm a school psychologist, so I'm interested in this.
How wonderful.
Yeah, but I'm always interested in the interaction between the environment and genetics. And, as we know, we can't change genetics, but, are there any promising treatments out there for people like this? If money were not an object, if, political climate was not an object, if we could get in there and intervene, early with kids, or even treat people that, are able to admit that they're having these intrusive types of thoughts. Because we spend so much money on prisons in this country. We incarcerate more people than any other country in the world, and yet we're not doing the hard work in preventing this sort of thing from happening in the first place. And I know it's complex,
but there's a serious problem with the question, because when you say people like this, we would have to understand what categories he falls into. We'd have to understand his mental health. We would have to understand, in other words, he's been a sort of weird black box. And as a consequence, it's almost as if it would offend his ego that he could be categorized, that he could be understood, that we could understand his motive, because then you'll stick him in a few pigeonholes, and that would offend his sensibility, you see? The whole point is to resist categorization. Everybody else gets categorized. And that's very important, because until we even know what's going on with him, it's not possible to talk about intervention, because we have no idea what the issue is that we're trying to prevent. Are we talking about someone where there's autism involved? Are we talking about a psychopath? These are things people have said, right? Not me. Was there serious mental illness there? Was it drugs? Was it family dynamics? Was it, we don't know. So until we understand what the heck went on, it's not possible to answer that question. So,
right. No, he needs a full psychological workup.
And, let that sort it out. Yeah, and then
a differential diagnosis besides just autism, because I work with kids with autism, and there's something more going on, in my humble opinion, than just autism.
They'll assess it, and I think, but this video, just so you understand why we pulled it up. Go ahead, Chris.
No, I think, just one of the common denominators with everybody that you've mentioned is pornography. Until we address that, then, that's the fuel. Let's admit it.
Well, I believe it's a fuel, but it's not the cause. Ted Bundy told that to those interviewers, I believe, just to tell them what they wanted to hear. And sure, it's definitely making it worse. But it's not. But it's not
Wesley Allen Dodd at Wesley Allen Dodd at 9 years old, was exposing himself riding a bicycle, and his fuel was pornography. And everybody, if we look at this in its evolution, the internet put this on steroids. But see, and I hear what I know. I remember what Bundy said. But and Bundy found, magazines as a young boy at 8, 9 years old. Do you know the average kid, and you're dealing with it right now in the schools, if you take a 7, 8, or a 9-year-old and ask them if they've been exposed to pornography, the answer is yes.
Yeah, but there have been serial killers around way longer than the internet or any access to that. So I hear what you're saying, Chris, but I don't agree that that's a cause.
But not at the level that it's at now.
No,
right.
I'm not saying that's the cause. I'm saying that's the fuel that drives the engine. And you're right. When you have to have the fuel that drives the engine. And without that fuel, then you have no destiny. And Brian Coburger was looking at extremely damaging and sadistic type of pornography.
Non-consensual.
Allegedly Rex Herman too, correct?
But all of them.
Yeah.
Every serial, and I interviewed Dodd, by the way, in Walla Walla State Prison in 1992.
One of the worst human beings I've ever heard of.
I spent 6 hours getting into his head. I think I was the second to the last interview that they let, me going. I went in and interviewed the guy because my expertise is criminal behavior analysis in relationship to pedophilia during homicide. So guys that are killing children for sexual gratification. So in 92, they sent me in to go, death row up in Walla Walla. And I've interviewed others, many others. And every single one of these guys, there are two common denominators. The first one is alcohol. The second one is pornography. But when we take it back into, a life pattern analysis, we see very consistently that life pattern analysis starts to show exposure of pornography at a very young age, and typically from the father to the son. They find the father's stash and then they immerse themselves into that. And my hat's off to you in the schools today as a psychologist, because you're seeing these kids, and this call here is a perfect example. You're trying to figure out, how do we stop the dam from breaking any further. And I'm here to tell you that dam was broken in 1993 when the advent of the internet came along. And I did a predictive analysis after we had 43 prostitutes that were murdered and dumped in San Diego County. And then there were 6 or 8 kids that disappeared thereafter. And I did a predictive analysis that we would see the advent, and Gary knows this, we would see the advent of the intellectual white-collar predator. And my gosh, like 4 years later, because of the fuel that was being available, and it came from some research that I did by going out and interviewing prostitutes. And you know what they were telling us at that time? This is 93. They were telling us that the Johns were becoming more and more violent. And, collectively as a group, we sat back and said, well, wait a minute. What do you mean? What's going on here? Well, yeah, the regular customers aren't coming out anymore. And what the conclusion was, they were staying home. Okay. And then now they're in these chat rooms competing for a victimology, a 12, 13, 14-year-old girl. And the trench coat guy, whatever happened to that guy who used to expose himself? Where did that guy go?
Chris, you obviously missed the part of the conversation where Josh told the entire audience that he fantasized about wearing a trench coat and nothing else.
That's not true. I didn't say that.
I'm teasing. Well, you sort of. What happened is I told the story about the person who mailed me the trench coat, and Josh made a joke about wearing it in the house, doing nothing else.
Watering plants. That's all I said.
Right. That's right. And we turned it into a far more dramatic story. But Chris, what you are touching on is worthy of a whole other conversation, because it gets right to the heart of the whole second half of the new evil.
New evil. That's what I was going to say.
Every technology, can be used for good and for darkness. And there is no question that men are highly visual creatures, and that when sex gets brought into the picture, it's all about associations and fantasies and imagery and all of that. And it is true that pornography has created a kind of smorgasbord.
But don't you believe that drove Coburger here, Gary?
There is no question in my mind that whatever perverse fantasies Coburger was having in that creepy room that we saw photos of, he was sitting at that computer in that lonely, whitewashed, kind of weird, sterile world that he was in, at that computer watching repulsive things. The hints we have of what he was watching was the things that had to do with non-consensual sex. Any one of us who found out that someone we loved was watching pornography in which women were drugged and forced, we would be mighty disturbed, because let's face it, those women would look dead. They would be having things done to them like they weren't even human. And we have to understand what we're dealing with there. So, the fact that that stuff is out there and it can sort of make the brain numb after enough time that you watch it is disturbing, because eventually it's not enough.
Well, and
a friend of
it's a
mine
whole
said he goes,
rewiring,
a friend,
right? To the doc's point, that's a whole rewiring system. I mean, there's there's research that shows those individuals that become addictive, addicted to the problem, that there's a whole rewiring going on in dopamine, serotonin, and all this stuff. Yeah,
absolutely. A friend of mine in the audience. Go ahead, John.
I was going to say that it's not what created these people, but a lot of it is what fuels them, and I think that's what's being said is that that urge has always. Yes, the urge has always been there with those kinds of offenders, but it helps nothing when they have access to just an unlimited amount of material that they can get their dopamine high from, and then that's sort of, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's sort of how a lot of people
in our foundation is Dr. Larry Simons as well. Larry runs the group study at Atascadero for a registered sex offenders.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And yes. And if you know Atascadero, which in Northern California.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. So, we register a couple things in this country: cars, guns, and sex offenders. Okay. There's a reason for that. Because there's been no rehabilitation process that's ever existed that could exist other than, the control mechanism of, how to control that impulse, and meaning how to, and I know I'm speaking to the choir here, but I'm speaking to the audience. Okay. We can't, and I'm not talking to the two docs because they, this is like old news, but the principle is, okay, once it's broken, once they get to that point, and I'm not talking about the Ridgeways and all of those guys, right? They're at a whole different sadistic level. Okay. But they didn't just get there.
Mm.
It was a process of building. And that's what this is, that's what the problem is. And so I wanted to go back real fast and finish the concept of the trench coat guy. Well, that was the guy that showed up on the street and was beating up all the prostitutes, and the doctors, the lawyers, everybody else is home in the chat rooms competing for a victimology, because that was the intellectual game now. Oh, you don't want to go with that guy. You want to go with me. And all of that charged fuel, that trench coat guy was now placed into a position of voyeurism. And they had to watch all of this charged fuel going by. And now that fuel had to be expelled somewhere. Well, guess where they went? They went to the street. And some of it turned into rage. And they started, all the girls that I talked to, they were like, you're not going to believe this, but these guys are choking, they're punching, they're doing all the things that they never used to do 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Yeah. And
that was 93. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I guess I want to kind of want to reroute, if I may reroute back to my original question for Dr. Gary, which was about prevention and intervention. I'm really more interested in I mean, I hear what you're saying about pornography, Chris, but honestly, we have freedom of speech in this country, and there's not a whole lot that I can do about that. So I'm more interested in hearing about psychological treatments that have promise that we can, something that we can do to prevent this.
But that's post-incident.
But we're not going to get rid of pornography tomorrow, and that's a whole separate topic that for another day.
No, I agree, but would you agree that that's the fuel?
It's the fuel, but it's not the cause. Like I said before, it's not the cause. These people are born that way, and like I said, Bundy and Ridgway and Coburger, they had decent childhoods. There's nothing that you can really identify that caused them to become this way. I mean, it's more genetics than it is
right?
environment.
Right. Ridgway, they identified in his brain front left lobal, injuries. Bundy developed, normally, yes, through a childhood, but he also immersed himself into pornography. And he also joined a variety of churches.
So since there's nothing we can do tonight about pornography, I'm more interested in hearing what Dr. Gary has to say about psychological treatments. I'm sorry.
It's a very complicated question because it presupposes that all people who commit violent acts are in one giant bucket. If you're talking about the pathway to preventing psychosis-based violence, which is not as common as people would have you think,
right?
Or the bucket of violence associated with personality disorders, or what the heck am I looking at there?
I don't know. Hold on.
What? Am I losing my mind? Was that Chris?
I don't know. I'm trying to fix it.
I'm still here. I can hear you.
Okay, something went on there. I don't know what that was.
Or
it was. I like looked up and I was like, "What the heck?" Like I was having this, So okay, so are we talking about violence associated with fantasy? Are we talking about violence associated with personality? With somebody who's been treated badly by the world? With somebody who just has some kind of genetic psychopathy? Are we talking about somebody using drugs or alcohol? In other words, first we have to understand all the different pathways, and then we can talk about intervention. So the question, before I can even address it, is what are you trying to prevent? Psychopathy? Are you talking about trying to prevent people who do this because they're sick? In other words, what's the pathway that you're talking about?
She's not in the studio right now. I'm just.
Oh,
maybe she is. I don't know.
Well, I think the point is it can't be answered without knowing that. But it's okay. I think I actually was really hoping you were going to show the Naslin video, because it drives home a point.
Again, we're getting a little long, but the
Okay, then
Well, if I understood where she was going, and I
bring her back on. Hold on.
Oh, you're still here, but you're not on the screen. There's a green.
Oh, she is now. She can hear now. Sorry, I don't know what happened.
She's on the screen, Josh.
No, you are.
No,
the caller is on the screen, but it's just like the crest of their head. It's like the crest of someone's head on the screen.
I don't know. It keeps giving me different. It's stupid. Sorry.
And can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
No, Gary, even Ann with her work, right? Going back.
Right.
Just and Victor, and Victor studying, and you guys studying even today. I mean, I think the doctors, where she was going, and I agree with her, but I don't understand the principle of they were born this way. I think it's, for me anyway, in my experience, that's why we have all of these therapy sessions that take place in institutions like a Atascadero. And they'll all tell us, they tell you, right? Am I wrong? I wasn't born this way.
But I don't understand what this way means. In other words, that's what they're asking about psychopaths, or they're asking about, in other words, I'd have to know what the thing is, because each thing there's a different answer. I mean, you understand, these are very sophisticated things. I mean, we can't lump it all like all offenders are the same. See? So
no, I know.
Oh, there you are. You're there. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know. It's a broad question.
It's a broad question. So
yeah.
Group. Do you mean psychopaths?
Yes. People that are having intrusive thoughts of killing someone, or multiple people.
Because, like, for example, if you looked in the literature on attenuated psychosis, which is an area that I spent many years of my life, helping to elucidate how people develop psychotic disorders. It was my own work that introduced into the literature. Literally, when I talk about it in New Evil, the citation is me. It's my own work that I did with Raghi Gurgis at Columbia. We showed that 1/3 of people with emerging psychotic disorders have intrusive violent thoughts. In other words, that intrusive thoughts can have a quasi-psychotic nature. They can have an OCD nature. That can be a very different thing than actually fantasizing intentionally about going out. The intrusive, by implication, has a whiff of it being ego dystonic. You don't feel connected to it. It doesn't even feel like it's you. It just pops in your head. One of the things I showed in my own research, just as an example, with Dr. Gerges and I showed in our research, is that if you say to a population of people with quasi-psychotic symptoms, are you thinking of hurting anyone? In our sample, which I remember off the top of my head, it was 200 people. The answer was 0.
Okay. Now we're getting to it. Okay.
Right. 0 of them said, yeah, I am. But if you said, do you sometimes feel that something outside of yourself is kind of putting ideas in your head about hurting someone? 1/3 of them said yes.
Wow.
Because it's ego dystonic. They don't see it as coming. The question is phrased in a way that biases the answer. So I think that I've learned to be very, very careful about how we ask questions. So if you're talking about a psychopathic person, my strong sense, based on years of having dealt with this and looked at the literature, decades of literature that I've read, I think the combined wisdom of that literature is that probably psychopathy requires 2 ingredients. One is a brain probably that is inclined, if we're talking about primary psychopathy, not secondary where it's learned. I mean like a true psychopath born, with they have to be born with traits like being sensation seeking and bored and lacking compassion and all of that. But if such a person is treated well by the world and has positive environmental experiences, they might channel that stuff towards something pro-social and be the fearless person that will, drive the tank into a group of the enemy, or throw themselves on a grenade. In other words, they could channel it into something good. But if they are treated badly by the world, they could go the route of doing something terrible. So think, for example, you talk about Coburger. I'm not diagnosing him. I don't know what's going on with him.
No.
But Coburger is somebody that
he sucks.
That he has a certain kind of brain. And he was at the crossroad. He could have used it to try to help law enforcement, and he could have done it in the direction of being a criminal. And probably what was going on in his life that made him feel out of control, and certain darknesses that he was drawn to, and things that fueled him, pushed him in the direction of taking that brain and using it in a vile way. And so where I think there is a wisdom to what Chris is saying, is because those of us who have studied this know that when it comes to which way you're going to imply your brain, it's all about what you're exposed to and the environment. And these kinds of people, psychopathic people who are playing out sexual perversions, when you have that mixture, what sometimes happens is that they are hurling themselves into a world. We know, because I've interviewed mountains of them. So is Chris. They have to be looking at something that is allowing fantasies of domination and control expressed through sex to kind of come into their lives. It's not causal, but it's a fuel.
Yes.
And that's where I think you guys are agreeing. You guys are agreeing. And I can tell you, and it's a point a friend of mine that's in the audience made, which I think was very astute, which is that, look, I have spoken to Vernon Gayberth, a member of our foundation, who's a dear friend and very famous for his, wonderful writings on this kind of stuff. He really, in many ways, pioneered a lot of, just as Ann Burgess did and John Douglas and a lot of other people associated with the foundation. And one of the things that Vernon and I have chatted about, and I think he's 100% right, is that if you took pornography away, it would be like we went back in time to the days when it didn't exist on the internet, right? What did men who were these kind of offenders do? Well, as the audience member whom I know personally pointed out, they would just think about it. They would draw it. They would find other ways to do it. But the visualization of fantasy is a very important fuel because it breaks down barriers, it builds dopaminergic connections, it excites, and it creates a kind of escalation process. Eventually, it's not enough. One of the things people are not talking about enough, because they don't want to acknowledge the sexual quality to the Coburger case, is the escalation. Chris, you know what I'm talking about, right? The escalation from burglary, breaking into houses, to possibly stealing from the Korean exchange student who was supposed to be his friend, IDs that he had in his possession, etc., to kind of violent pornography that had a quality of, taking advantage of people who had no will to say no, to this kind of
and this doctor's
behavior. Right.
She's got 100 Coburgers potential in her school right now. With the power of the internet,
the fuel.
In the internet. I mean, just look at all the violent TikTok videos these kids are exposed to.
Right.
Yeah, but I guess
you have to be a certain type of person to get fueled by it. I think that's what Chris and you are actually both saying.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
right.
I agree. It's kind of like an airline pilot.
Right.
They teach airline pilots on simulators to fly a 737 before they ever get in the cockpit. Same thing with tank drivers, or cops with simulation. Shoot, don't shoot. All and these kids here are in Minecraft. I call it Minecraft. Okay, and they're learning how to. They're thinking in bits and bytes. They're not critically thinking through these video games and these processing. But those kids are coming out. Thanks to your guidance. As a school, psychologist and guidance counselor, those kids are coming out and flying drones and learning how to, blow things up in foreign countries. Okay. And I guess what I'm saying is, if we're going to do a measured analysis here against, the Ridgeways and the Coburgers and the Bundys and all these other individuals, well, if we do that, like I was saying, the pattern life analysis, well, where did they start? They weren't born this way. A child's not brought into the world and goes, you know what? I like porn.
Well, no, and I'm not saying that. Like I said before, I do believe that behavior is an interaction between the environment and genetics.
That's the right word. And I will tell you, look, it's very difficult to prove that you prevented something, right? As somebody who worked in psychosis prevention.
Yes.
I can tell, but I can tell you, I have had people that I have worked with clinically who show signs that are highly, highly suggestive of them moving in the direction of an antisocial life. Okay. And I will work with them to try to get them to channel those same traits towards doing something pro-social. It is very, very difficult. They are highly transactional individuals, but under the right circumstances, you can sort of push someone in the direction of doing something where they might use that aggression and that so forth towards doing something that can be useful. But unfortunately, if the person has been hurt by the world and treated like crap, the person will take that brain and they will spin it and say, I'm going to use this to hurt people. And I think you need that combo. That is why being kind to people is not to be underestimated.
No, I agree.
Because you never know when you're dealing with a person who is an antisocial and furious at the world and whatever. And you could be this sort of exception to the rule. I am aware of cases, for example, from having done the database on at Columbia with Raggy Gerks on mass murders. There are cases when you look at them of offenders who go around shooting people and they skip over the person who was kind to them. You understand what I'm saying? It makes a difference in a person's life. Now, look, in those cases, it didn't prevent the shootings. But it means that those people must mean something to them, even though these are individuals who look like they have a wanton disregard for life. Something got in there to the individual. So I think what you're asking is the $1 million question of how psychopathy develops. We're not going to solve it tonight. Yeah. But I have to say, I think a point to both of you. I think you are correct about there being a balance between the brain and experience. And I think Chris is right that there are certain things that are not helping because they throw fuel on the fire in people that are becoming desensitized. And let's face it, pornography is not doing women many favors in terms of the way that men are coming to think about them. Objectified, rapidly replaced, a one-night experience, and then it's boring. expectations of physical activity with no intimacy whatsoever. I mean, there aren't too many pornographic movies where there are deep chats preceding the sex. There's no intimacy with the human being at all. Total objectification. These are things that spill over into real relationships and destroy them. I have seen it with my own eyes. So it's a kind of a darkness that is very real. And Chris, you I think it's very brave to talk about it, but it's important because in people who do what we do for a living, it's the elephant in the room.
I mean, 7 or 8 years ago, when the Secret Service did the research and the study on school shooters, okay, I was in the room when the presentation was given. It was given in Florida, and I was present. And the doctor that I forget her name, but her team that did the research, and you're probably familiar with it, Doctor, about the Secret Service study about early intervention, that kind of stuff.
I know it.
Okay, and also the doctor on the phone. I've often thought to myself, reflecting back, post, the shooting up in the Northeast, etc. I've often thought to myself, though, well, how much of an influence, not necessarily social society, but how much of an individual influence and isolation are these children going through with family dynamics? And is there a way to prevent that? Is there a way to stop that? And that was part of what the research and the study was. But if we go back even further, remember, I started this business in 1982. So I've got a couple of weekends, doing this.
Yes, indeed.
And, this idea, even back then when Columbine happened, the world was blown away. Law enforcement was blown away. The worst mass shooting before that, I remember, was San Ysidro at the McDonald's.
Oh, yeah, I know it.
Right. And so, and he used a shotgun.
I know it very well, that case. Yeah. I hate that story.
And so when Columbine happened, everybody went, what the heck is going on with us? Is it internal? Is it out, external? And when they started doing the study, they were realizing that, no, that there's a lot of moving parts here. There's a lot of dynamic parts here. But you know what? One of the pieces of the puzzle, though, that we keep ignoring as a society, and everybody says, "Yeah, First Amendment." Okay, great, I get it. But at the same time, when does it become dangerous? And I think we are past the, don't pass go and you're not going to collect $200. Okay. As a society, we have to come to a realization that we used to protect children by plugging this stuff into a back room or zoning it within inside of certain geographic regions. But now, a 7-year-old, an 8-year-old can just click it, a click away, see some of the most horrific stuff available to the human soul, and then go to school the next morning in second grade. I think we have to decide from even a social context, what's the impact of that? And I'm grateful that you're there at that school, guiding these kids. I really am, because I've seen the fruits of that rewiring. Gary and I always have this funny concept every once in a while. I'll catch the lion, okay, but I got to think like the lion and know how to catch him, and then I'll put him in the cage and you can study him. Okay, but they're two different trains of thought. And my thinking has been, I'm really worried about the next 5-10 years as society, because we're falling apart. And whether or not people want to admit it, it takes courage to say it on YouTube. We are falling apart. and pornography is driving a lot of it, and the free availability to get it. Go ahead, Gary.
No, I just want to point out, because people are researching what you said, and the information that's being put in the chat is not accurate. The Hennard case was a Luby's restaurant shooting that
right in Texas.
I wrote about in the New Evil at length. There's a whole chapter on him. The shooting that Chris is talking about is the James Huberty mass shooting at a McDonald's, which was truly a massacre. I mean, that story is really, really depressing. Chris, how do you pronounce the town that was in?
San Ysidro.
Oh, San Ysidro. I always wondered, because I've seen it in print so many times. But you know that that how many people died in that shooting?
I don't recall exactly, but there was a young boy. I think it was like a 12-year-old on a bicycle outside. He went in. The people were hiding underneath the tables, and he told his wife he was going down to shoot cans.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah, it was bad,
and including an 8-month-old.
Guys, I hate to cut it short.
Yeah,
but I got 2 dogs that are scratching at the door. I gotta get them out of here.
Okay,
and
go.
But I really do. This conversation has been great. Thank you guys so much.
Did the caller? We didn't lose the caller, did we?
It looked like she said she got booted. I don't know what happened.
Oh, okay. Thank you for your call.
1 second before you go, I just want to show you one thing.
I can't deal with it.
Nut job.
Okay. All right. Well, on that note.
All right, Gary. We'll carry on tomorrow. We'll pick up that conversation. Josh, this is great. Thank you. Thank you for inviting us.
Looking at on the screen. I can't do it.
Sorry, I'm trying to get it down.
Thank you, Doctor, for the school.
Take care.
I can't. I gotta go. All right. Thank you so much. Bye.
Aloha.
See you guys.
Smell you later.
That was special.
Thanks, Dr. Gary. All right, guys. Thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate it. Well, we're at 3 hours and 45 minutes, and that's about the limit for the dogs. They're pissed. But I appreciate it. Thank you so much for everything, you guys. Thank you for being here. And we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.